Hi, Avis. How are you? You are on mute. Okay, great.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear there's this horrible distracting background noise when I have the mic open. I don't know if you can hear it now.
No, no, you sound
Good.
good. I know
Good.
Theo's in the middle of a thunderstorm and tornado alert, but if you, I think, are you in northern part of DC?
No, I'm in Southeast.
Are you in Southeast? Okay, and I'm in Brandywine, so I'm not that far
Okay.
from you, but he's up in Montgomery County, Silver Spring, so he's getting hit by some bad weather.
Well, I hear the thunder outside.
It's coming. It's coming from
Yeah.
somewhere around here. It's beautiful right now, but
Is it?
yeah,
No,
so we're anticipating though, we just created some redundancies just in case
okay.
those power goes out and we have the same thing on our tech team. So hopefully like the whole thing doesn't go out or anything crazy like that. So let me just kind of go over what you're doing really. But first of all, Kim Sesko, Theo and I have been working together for decades, really. First with America Speaks, and now we have our own organization, Public Engagement Associates. But he's doing this, I know, through, the church, and I've been helping him on that technical end of it and helping him with some of the coordination. So I just wanted we have like a kind of a schedule of things that's going to happen. And I wanted to go in here and see when I have you coming in.
I think it's 8:20.
8:25. Yep. So we have you coming in at 8:25. And what I'm going to do right now, and if you're going to leave your system open, I am going to rename you as guest. Where'd you go? So if that's okay. And you're still going to be in the list where all the panelists are. So your view is going to be a little bit different than, if you were a regular participant. You're going to see a little bit more stuff, what's going on behind the scenes and things like that. And so I'm going to go ahead and so they're not aware that this is going to happen, right? Is that it? That
what do you know?
It's a yeah.
What do you know?
I hear that you're presenting something too. That's all I know. That's great. And you're back on mute. So I've renamed you as guest.
Okay, okay. Am I on mute now? I'm not on mute now, right?
No, you're good. When you're on mute, you see that right next to your name on the bottom, you see that. And what I can do is I'll change your name once you come on, just for now, and I'll keep you, I'll go on. I have your name written down right here. I'll put your name in.
Now, sometimes I'll hit the button and I think I've unmuted and either the host has done something or some double clicked and not known it. So I just want to make sure that I'm doing what I'm supposed to do.
Good. BUCHANNAN?
No, ANAN.
BUCHANAN. Great.
Yes. Yeah.
Great. Or is there anything visual I need to be aware of? You don't need to share a screen or anything like that. Is that correct?
No.
Great. Okay. Cool. Well, great. That's Theo. So if you want to put us on mute and put us on, well, first let me go check with him and see if he's okay. Hey, Theo. Theo? Yeah. Okay. No worries. Let me resend your, are you looking at your dialogue days or your? Yes, I am. I've been talking to her. Yes, I'm talking to her now. Yep, and she waved at you. Yes, so she's on right now. So, okay, we'll do. Okay, all right, bye-bye. Okay, he's trying to find himself in, and I gotta help him with that for a second.
Hey there.
Hey, Will, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
Good. Theo lost himself, so I gotta go find him.
Sounds about right.
Yeah. Give him a new link to go in. Send him back his link. I hope it lets me do it. Let me from where I am. Yeah, I'm already in a meeting. I'm gonna have to do that a different way now.
Did you already send the updated run of show? Or was there an
Nobody
update?
did. Right. No, I can send you the one that I'm currently looking at, that I kind of tweaked myself. I took Theo's. Oh, you know what? Let me hit that save as, and let me go ahead and send you what I have, because I just took his. That's right, and he didn't do anything yet. So
But you're not going to need me for the whole hour and a half.
Oh, no,
Okay.
no. So if you're going to be back in at 8, what do you think? What time?
Oh, that would come for the program itself. I intend to listen to James, but if I have an hour and a half, since it's an hour and a half until the program starts, I just want to know what ability I have.
Right. Now you can go ahead and if you want, you can leave it open and mute yourself now.
Okay.
And put it on, take yourself off camera and just go do what you want to do. If you need to sign out, just let me know so I know when you're coming back in.
Is Theo like not here for the time being? Like,
no, he is not currently here. He lost his link, so I'm trying to get him back in.
Can you keep him out for like? Well, he might pop in, huh?
Do what you need to do.
Okay.
Right now he's not in because he can't find his link that I could have sworn I just sent it.
So did you tell these guys what? I assume I spoke to you on the phone yesterday. Is that right? Is this Betsy?
No, you talked to. I'm Avis.
Oh, okay. So there's kind of a little trick to this.
Okay, because that's what I'm curious about.
Okay, is there a way to keep Theo out for right now?
Yeah, just won't give him his link because he's lost. He can't find his.
The award that they were going to pull one over on James Foreman is not actually for James Foreman. It's a double whammy. It's actually for Theo. All right. So I talked to Betsy yesterday, and she said that this award is for Theo, and Theo is under the impression that it's for James Foreman. All right. Is that correct? Are you tracking that?
That's all new. That's all new to me.
It's all new to me.
Right. That's why I asked you, what do you know?
Yeah. So just keep it tight-lipped, but we're not putting James Foreman on the screen. We're going to keep Theo on the screen at that point. Theo is going to be super surprised and like, what in the world is happening? So, yeah, that's why I wanted Theo to stay out for like 2 seconds. But yeah, I don't know how you guys pulled this off, but it's pretty amazing. Like, only certain people know certain things, and I need us to know that it's not for James Foreman.
Okay.
So what I need to know, I don't know what my cue is. I don't know if I'm starting as soon as James finishes. I don't know.
Theo's gonna introduce, kind of like plug himself back in and say, at this time we're gonna, have a surprise. He doesn't know that it's for himself.
Okay.
So yeah, and I'm pretty sure that's a Theo cue that will get you in to
he was going to bring James back out, although with what you're saying now, he'll probably still say the same thing.
He will say the same thing.
It won't be James coming out. It will be Avis, right?
Say that again.
Avis, is that your name? Is that how you say that?
It's Avis, yes.
Avis, yes. Okay.
So
I think that would be your cue.
So your cue is we're going to pull you up on the screen. You'll see the request to start your video. You'll be added to the gallery view, and then you'll be able to pull it over on him whenever he turns it over to you to present to James Foreman.
Okay.
Then
So is he going to think? Is Theo going to think it's awkward if James is supposed to be doing something that he's not?
Well, it's all going to happen right at the same time. It's going to flip. Like
he's not going to notice who's on the screen and who's not on the screen, I think.
Okay.
He might request us to pull up James, but at that time you can take over, and do your thing.
And when you say video, you mean the video screen. You don't mean there's a video like to play,
Correct. Yeah, we're going to pull your video feed up next to his, and that's when you'll do your thing. Well, this worked out great.
And one other question at the end, when I'm finished, and I'm going to turn it over, give him time to say a few words, but then do I need to worry about throwing it back to somebody after he's finished? Or
I think Theo will take it back over and get us on
Okay.
to the rest of the show. We can, yeah, I think that's the deal. So
Yeah.
he's going to be speechless though.
Okay.
All right, great.
Thank
I
you.
need
All right,
to
cool.
now find Mr. Theo. Let me see if I can do it this way.
All right.
Try to see if I can send him a panelist. Are you guys ready?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay, so I'm gonna copy the invitation and see if I can get him in through this panelist link since he lost himself. Not where he's supposed to
Avis,
be.
do you know if you have HD video on yours on Zoom?
Who, me?
Avis, if she's still there.
I have no idea what
Um,
I have a laptop. I'm using my laptop. That's all I can tell you.
Down at the bottom left where it says stop video, and then there's a little arrow next to that. Down on the bottom left. Where
No, I don't know.
Do you know where your mute button is?
Yes.
Okay, right
I
next to it.
I had the wrong display up. Okay.
okay.
There you go.
No problem. Click on that little up arrow, and then you should see an option for video settings.
Okay.
Click on that, and then right in the
Okay.
middle of the screen, you should see enable HD.
Yes.
Is that checked?
No.
Can you go ahead and check that, please?
There it is. That changed. I think you just clicked it. Yeah. There you go.
So what is it? What's the change?
It just improves the video quality.
Yeah, it's a little crisper. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah, that looks
Oh.
better. Okay, great.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
All right, I'm gonna see if I can get Theo in. I hope this works. Otherwise, he can sign in. It's his account. He can always sign in.
Yeah, that's what I was afraid of, actually.
I just don't want to go to the, now that we're in the webinar, I'm afraid, well, I guess I could open it up again and then see if I can hit a panelist link. I just don't want to do anything crazy with this. Once it's open, I feel a little
Right.
anxious about messing around with it.
Mhm.
So, there is.
There he is.
Hi there.
Hello,
Oh,
Theo.
there you go. Great.
I'm on
You
my
came in
wrong
as you.
computer, but
Okay.
I'm here.
Hi, Avis. You.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I forgot it.
Hi,
Recognized.
Buchanan. He's showing up as with my name on my screen.
Oh, that's
Oh,
funny.
and you,
So,
how did that? Oh, you know how high that is?
I can-
Because it must have been a little disconcerting, right? That's because I couldn't find the link. And so I finally saw it on yours and I clicked your link.
okay.
no, that's funny.
I'm sorry.
All right.
Uh,
Everybody's doing it.
I have to go to another computer, but I knew you were on, Avis, and I felt badly being late. I just want to check in. They're doing probably a sound and all check with you, but I
Right.
didn't know if you had, maybe you can finish that and if you had questions about, where it'll come on the program and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
we've taken care of all of that.
Good. Okay. So I'm not necessary. I'm Theo Brown. Thank you. So don't let me interrupt. Wherever you all were, you can finish up.
I think we had already wrapped up, so we're good. We fixed her video and
If you
her
want to
audio
head
sounds good.
out,
Fill me in then on how it's going to work. I'm the one who needs to catch up then. So are you going to stay in this link, Avis, all the way through and or you're not going to call back in later? We're just hiding you as guests. That's the way.
No. I'm going to be here for the host from now through the end of the program.
Okay, great. And you've already talked through when they'll bring you in. At the
Mhm.
very end, before there's some, we're going to open the chat and ask them to comment on a couple of things. And then right after that, I'll say we have some announcements. But first, I want to call on Avis Buchanan from Public Defender Service, who has an announcement of her own, something like that.
Okay.
That'll
Great.
be then when you're done, I really do have 2 or 3 other short announcements that we'll do.
And do you have a hard stop at 8:30?
We dribbled over at 8:33 a couple last time, and it may do that again. We certainly don't want to go much past, but yeah,
Okay.
it won't cut off right at 90 minutes if we're in the middle of something.
Okay.
And are you going to read something, a statement, or just tell me a little about what you're going to do so I have a sense of how it'll fit?
My understanding is I have about 3 minutes. And so I don't, if you're asking if I'm reading something versus talking, it's going to be a combination, something in between there.
I meant like there's not like an inscription or a citation or any kind of
Oh, no.
thing like that. You're reading.
No.
You're just going to explain the award and
Yes.
and then
Yeah.
virtually give it to him. You know?
Yes. Yes.
Great.
Right before it's your turn, do you want to rename your account or do you want to leave it as guest all the way through? I'm just worried if there's another potential guest.
Kim's going to do that.
All right.
Before everybody got on, she said she was going to put me as guest for now, and then put my name on.
All right.
I'd be displayed.
Sorry, I missed that part. Cool.
Yeah. So I'm not sure what my status is. I'm not a panelist, but I'm not an audience member. I'm something in between, I think.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think we can. I mean, y'all probably already discussed this, but we can probably leave this as guest as long as the video is turned off, and James Foreman doesn't really need to know, who it is and the guest list and all that stuff. So, it's up to you guys, but I think leaving it as a panelist is safer as far as not losing them in the mix of hundreds of people.
Right. We don't want her to be
case.
guest in hundreds of people versus guest in 5 people. Yeah.
Exactly. And there is a chance that someone else would be named guest. So who knows? So I say
she could be guest 1 and guest 2, but I was going to switch her name over at the appropriate time.
That's fine.
Or rename at the appropriate time.
Yeah,
I already
that's
put
fine.
it in my queue, and I just sent you guys the run of show if you want to see what I'm
Perfect.
working with.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And my video won't be displayed until that
Correct.
time too, right?
Yeah.
And you can always control your own view. You could always,
Mhm.
when you mute yourself and close your video, stop your video, you can do that too.
Okay.
And you're going to put James on sort of a gallery view or split screen after, or for at least part of the time she's talking. Is that what
Right.
you're
Just, yeah.
Yeah. Split screen.
Good.
I think we're good on that.
All right. Thank you. Thank
Okay.
you so much. Glad you guys are doing this. It'll be a nice way to end the 2 programs.
Yeah, I think so too.
It's called Champions of Freedom. Is that what you call it? Or
Champion of Liberty.
Liberty better.
And justice for all.
Okay, good.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
So I'm going to sign off for the time being and go get some other things done.
Great.
But I might check in or just, you have my email, Theo, right? So if you have to ask me something, just email me.
James will be coming on about 6:30. So in terms of keeping it, from not running into him.
So don't, as of 6:30, I should not be trying
Not
to
come back in on this link, not on video or
Okay.
anything.
Okay. All right. Good to know that.
'Cause he will
Just leave your video off.
Okay.
That way
Yeah,
you can
that's just
see.
what I do. Just leave
Yeah.
video off and, you could even, right.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Okay, guys. It's like it's under control. The storm has passed, Kim.
Oh, good.
It looked like we might have we'll lose power thing over here. Did you get anything out in Virginia, Will?
I think it's coming.
It was
Right.
quite a thunderstorm, and it was one of those you thought any moment, the power was gone.
Wow.
We didn't lose it. So
I hope I don't
Kim,
lose power.
Did you forward me the link, or should I just use? I can just use Avis's and change my name, I guess.
I already did it. Your name is already Theo
I didn't
Brown.
have it yet. So
I already changed your name, so you're good.
so I should use this link? Is that what you're saying?
Sure,
Or
stay in. You're a panelist. Stay in.
I need to move to the other computer.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
Oh, bye-bye. Go do that. I like that room, though. You're going the fan, except the fan.
I don't think I ought to do it in here with all the bobbleheads. It's a little distracting.
Okay.
We're gonna try. I do
Go
wanna
get back
look
on.
at-
Use the same link. It doesn't matter. Whichever link you comes on, it should acknowledge you as a panelist.
Yeah, I just saw her link and I was able to click that, and I don't know what happened to it, Kim. I was confused earlier today, and anyway, I never could find it. Everything I opened up was the participant link. So
That is weird because
it's just me not accounting for it. The other thing, I'm getting so damn many emails right now. I'm not tracking everything.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
get all the Eventbrite things, and we've got like 140 new registrations.
Oh, wow. That's
We got like
great.
800 people invited to this thing, 800 computers. We'll see.
That is great.
Okay, well, let me go
Can I
ahead
ask
and
one
exit out,
question?
and I'll come in on the other computer.
Given the storm and the power issues, if there's an issue here, and I mean, I got my battery is fully charged, but
It's not a
something
problem,
happens,
Mavis. If you
maybe I
lose, yeah, if
switch
you
to
go
my
out and
phone.
want
I'm
to
just
come
trying to
back
make sure
in,
there's a backup plan.
yep, if you go out and come
Oh,
back
you're on
in,
mute,
they'll be
Kim, or-
talking.
Oh, no,
We'll-
sorry. Oops. Sorry, I had you on mute, sorry.
No, we can hear you perfectly.
No, I had turned the sound off on my computer when I
Oh.
went to do my things. I didn't hear anything you said.
So what I was going to say, if you lose power between now and the time you're supposed to be on, that's fine. As soon, I'll be keeping an eye on it. They'll be doing their show. They're not paying attention to what's going on under this participant screen. So as soon as you come in, we'll just go ahead and reframe you. Just use that panelist link like you did before, so you're not stuck in the queue. But quick question, do you have a phone number for us, for me, or just in case?
Yeah, you
Good.
ready?
Awesome. So you're good. So if you need
Give
to,
it to you. Give it to you now.
okay, yeah, what you want, do you have my number?
Nope.
Okay, it's 202-423-9622.
423-9622.
That is it.
Okay. You ready for mine? Or do you want me to call you with mine?
Yeah, no, go ahead and read it to me. I'm fine with that. Go ahead.
202
Mm-hmm.
423
Oh,
3423.
see, we were at Verizon or somewhere at the same time. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thanks. Got you going.
Thank you.
Okay, so
Sorry about that.
Theo, we don't know what's going on with Theo. I see him still there.
Hopefully we can get him in there soon to get the whole lighting and fan camera positioning
Yeah,
thing dialed in a little bit.
okay, he's out. It was just taking a little longer to get him out or show that he was out. He's out. Yeah. Right. And that fan overhead is not spinning. I'm trying to sign in my other computer.
I don't know why that wasn't more noticeable to me last time.
It was
when we were
noticeable
doing it.
for me. It was like freaking me out just watching it during the show.
Yeah, I mean, it was there, but when I watched the video later, it just was driving me crazy when I watched it afterwards.
Just checking my phone so that if somehow the laptop loses power, I know I can join through my phone.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
Right.
So once we check Theo's background, I may be, just going off video and screen just while we're still prepping.
Yeah.
9932.
Is the conference call line good to call into? I want to kind of go ahead and get that set up. It's good for me to have that on my computer too. So I hear everything through the same headphones.
What, the conference call line?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, we can go on whenever you guys are ready.
Well, I just want to go ahead and dial in because last time it was like 2 minutes till it started and I was like sending audio over the screen share and that was no good. So
great, I'm in.
all right.
So let me just kind of take a look while we're waiting for Theo. What else do we need to grab my run of show? Everyone has their sign-in code. I've already done all the hand raising, Q&A sort of thing. Joe, you're the host. Will, we got to make sure you're a co-host.
Correct.
Oh, you have to do that, Joe, now.
Yeah, I just did. He's all set.
Okay, good. Go on, co-host. I got the dial-in number on, so I'm in whenever you guys want to go on. Hi, non-video participants. I think we could do that after we get on with the other guys. What else do we need to review? I have all the items that need to go into chat, which are some instructions at the front end of the day. Will, do you want to go ahead and get just check
Yeah.
the screen, which are
Yeah,
I'll
sure.
mute you for now. Yeah, you want to just go ahead and check that screen, see if our videos are good.
Looks good.
Mhm.
Welcome
Yeah.
and thank you for choosing freeconferencecall.com. You're helping people around the world communicate for free. Please enter your access code followed.
You said it looks all right.
Yes.
If you are the host, press star now. Otherwise, please wait and you will be joined into the conference.
Yeah, no, it looks good.
Please announce yourself.
Oh, there it is. Okay. Get out this. I'm just gonna full screen first. I'm not recording now, but I thought maybe put record on at 6:55. Does that right before Theo starts? Does that sound like right? Or is that too much? Wait till 7.
No, I think that's fine. I wouldn't wait too long.
Right.
Just
Okay.
me, in the event we use it, we can always trim it up.
Yep. Okay. I'm gonna heat up my coffee. I'll be right back.
I'm just
No.
saying.
What do you mean?
It's okay. I got it. I'll work it out. It's so much easier for me if I'm having a conversation with someone.
Mute it. And
I know how to do that.
well, then do you want the camera up here? Move.
You're not going to be holding that phone the whole time, are you? Both of you are holding phones.
Yeah. I need to have like an earphone in each, you know, the headphones and then something separate for the phone, so I don't have to sit here holding it.
Get double you because you're unmuted on.
No, it's fine. Can't see.
Hey guys, you there?
It's fine.
Yeah, hey Theo, we're here. Can you hear us?
Yeah.
Yeah. If you wanted to tell me about how this light looks, I know the colors in this room are a little odd, but we're trying to get the light to where it works. We turned off the fan. Does this look closer to what we need?
Yeah, I
Oh,
think
this
so.
is- Yeah, well, the fan's not moving. Can we do it? Maybe I just need to go to speaker view on.
Oh, well, let me stop sharing. There you go. And then speaker view.
You're quite the yellow. I don't know what's going on. It's
It's a
but
yellow
I can
room
see your
though, right?
face very good. Hmm.
I don't know. It's got a funny wall. It's got colored walls.
Yeah.
So,
I think it looks better, way better. Did you get a new camera for that thing?
no,
I think it's you have another lamp illuminating you. You look a lot brighter.
Lamp on that. I'm not sure why that door is so yellow. It's not quite that yellow.
Maybe what is that lamp behind you? Maybe
Yeah.
Maybe this one over here.
We
no.
can
When
turn that off,
On the
but
oth-
the problem is it's going to be dark in an hour.
yeah.
See,
Yeah,
think
but
that's
if the
better.
light's in his face,
It's
we're gonna
better.
see his beautiful face.
That's pretty good,
but then
actually.
you don't think it's going to be too dark in an hour with the sunlight?
I don't know. We can see.
Is that where you're getting your light from?
Oh.
Sunlight?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. If that's
It's going to be different.
Right.
Yeah. Does he have a screen, a camera not a camera, a lamp in front of him that can help him?
A
You
what?
can take the. Yeah, that's at least. You guys, might need to walk him through the HD for this computer.
I think he
Is that
might,
okay?
You already do
he
it.
might have it on actually.
No?
We can check though.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Is that tech support?
So what do you think? Is that okay?
The coloring is definitely much better. Like the door is white now instead.
Right.
Yeah.
so.
Right. Okay.
Theo, all the light in front of you though is coming in from sunlight.
Yeah. There's a window behind.
Okay.
Can you pull a shade on that or anything?
Yeah.
I mean, it's good now, but when it gets dark,
Yeah, that's why it's like you need to have that light ready on the front end. There's a lamp over there to your your shoulder.
Your left shoulder?
Is that his left?
Back
Yeah.
left.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Yeah, the only thing that I see is as a potential issue is just the glare from the computer screens through his glasses. I dealt with that all the time with my glasses. So
Yeah, me too. I think Theo, I think if you feel that you can, you know, as it gets a little bit dark, well, it's 8:30, so it's not gonna be too super dark yet, but as it gets darker.
I'm hearing you. Here, hold on. I got to get my stuff together here.
Here, right here.
Then is it on here?
No, it's on this one right here.
All
That should
right.
be loud.
All right.
Check.
Okay.
It's right there if you need it. That knob right there. Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead. See if I can. I couldn't hear you for a second there.
Check 1, 2, 3. Check 1, 2, 3.
Yeah. That's great. Okay. Well, I think we're close here. What else do we? And I can look at it again and have see if there's a light adjustment, but this seems better, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so
it's better.
you'll keep the fan and the overhead light off. That'll be better.
Yeah, the overhead light and the fan will be off.
Great.
Okay, what else do we need to do? Anything here?
This is just purely because we have a few minutes, but your shirt is very bright with that the light shining on it. I'm wondering if you have, I wonder if you have a darker shirt
I have a blue one I could certainly put on.
What do you guys think?
I think that might be a little better. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, I hate to even ask you to do that, but
Whatever, because I know
You don't have to change here now.
I'm not a fashion show. We try blue. We'll see. We'll vote.
all right. Thanks.
I'm gonna. I need to. I'm just want to look at the PowerPoint for a second.
All right.
I'm giving the first 4 organizations in chat first, right? Just the first 4.
Now,
I just want to split
sorry,
this list up.
Theo, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
All right. Theo redid some stuff since I sent that. Let me send you the updated slides. Sorry. I
No,
forgot
he
to.
he sent me the updated list. So I have the updated list and I cleaned them up. And I'm looking at the last set of slides you gave me. Well, let's touch base. Are they the first one, Voices for a Second Chance?
Yes.
Yeah, maybe
Okay.
you should just, can you read the order you have to me?
Yeah, let me just screen share this real quick.
Yeah.
So this is the first one. Yeah, you probably have the right ones if that's the first one you have. So
Mhm.
then DC Reentry Task Force.
Yeah. Yep.
And then National Association for the Advancement of Returning Citizens.
Yep.
All right. And Reverend William Lamar, the
Hello.
fourth. H. Lamar.
Ah,
Sorry, I forgot
hey.
the H.
Did you guys need me on at 6 or 6:30?
6:30 is fine.
Yeah.
Is this photo okay for your slide?
It looks like me, even if I don't want it to be. It's me. So hey, look,
I think it looks fantastic.
well,
So
thank you, sir.
that's why I chose it.
Yes. Well, I'll take it. Thank you.
And is your name and everything as you wish? These are editable, so I can change this
Yeah,
on the phone.
that's exactly right.
All right, thank you. So yeah, if you want to peek back on at 6:30, that's fine, and it'll be going pretty fast at that point. I think we're going to do a quick rundown of the show. But,
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds
if you
good.
have, do you guys, do you want to check his video now and just make sure? I
Might
can't
as
really
well.
see it.
We
Might as well do
have
it now,
him,
yeah.
So he
Okay.
can be chilling.
Do you the first thing I notice is you've got a fair amount of light coming in from behind you that's a bit of a glare. I don't know if you're able to, if there's any curtains or anything that you can.
No, there are no curtains there.
Oh,
I can
Or swivel
reposition.
yourself.
If
Let me
that's,
reposition the desk.
yeah, if that's doable, that would
How about that?
that is
That's
yeah,
better.
that is good.
Mhm.
And otherwise you look well illuminated and I can hear you fine.
Great.
Sound okay to everyone else?
Yeah, he sounds great. The one suggestion to make this top notch is, can you elevate your computer a little bit and bring the camera angle down toward you
Okay.
a touch?
So elevate. I can try that.
Yeah, if you have some books or anything you can put under it.
Like 3 Bibles worth of books.
That's
That's a distance you might.
3 Bible lift.
I always travel with more books than I read, so we're good.
Okay. And a pool table, nice. I like.
Hey
pool.
man, look, I'm at a retreat in the
Yeah.
mountains with my wife and some friends. So is that a little better? I can.
Yeah, and then tilt it.
And then angle back over toward that, whatever's on
Is
the,
that a
away
TV
from the
over there?
window.
There
Yeah,
you go.
is that a TV? Yeah, exactly. And then
Yeah.
how do you feel? Do you feel close to your screen? It feels,
I can go back a little bit. Is this
That
What do you
right
think,
there
guys?
looks pretty good.
that's
I mean,
perfect.
that's a good
yeah.
framing.
Mhm.
Yeah.
okay?
That
The
looks
lighting
great.
works perfectly.
Now
All right.
that light right in front of your eye up there is pretty bright. Is it dimmable or is it just set?
Yeah, I try to get a bright light to help out because it's kind of dark in the house.
Right.
I can.
It's good. There's just a little reflection off the glasses, but
Right.
It makes them.
I think
Blurry?
that's a little too dark, maybe.
Yeah, that's too dark. That
All right,
looks.
go back to where it was. Yeah.
Still, those glasses carry a lot of glare.
Yeah. Theo's
I
did too.
don't know. Depending on the type of light, I don't know if you're able to sort of point it. You know, if it's a lamp that you can aim upwards, and that maybe it might
Let me see if
kind
I
of
can.
bounce off the ceiling a bit.
Okay, let me try that. Dane, is that you? Do you mind lifting this light up? We're trying to so the light's up just a little. Try to lift it up a little bit. See if we can even get it to bounce off the.
It's still too dark. There's one
No,
more.
no. It was a little. All right, how's that height? Bring it down a little bit.
Yeah, what kind of light is it?
It's just a big desk lamp.
Mm.
Let me try one more.
We might be,
Is-
you know.
Hold up.
Go ahead.
1 second. Let me give it some more semi-natural light.
That's a little better.
Yeah. And if it has to go back to where it was, it wasn't terrible other than that glare off the glasses, but
And we got another lamp coming over now. You see the nice llama behind me? You know, whoever decorated.
I was wondering, was that a llama or a cat, an angry cat? Like,
Yeah,
I
it looks like a
wasn't
cat.
sure.
It's a llama. I think it's
Okay.
a llama. I think it's a llama.
My 12-year-old would love that picture. Just
oh yeah.
oh girl,
How's that?
nice.
That looks good.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
not. Yeah, that's
And
perfect.
if you tilt your head up, it might get more glare, but if you keep it where it
Right,
is,
don't tilt it up.
Yeah, don't tilt it up. Basically, yeah, that
That's
looks
perfect right
fantastic,
there.
man. Thanks,
Okay.
man. That
Straight
looks
on.
great. Hello.
Hey, I'm trying.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, not you all.
Yeah.
From my side, he's still dark, but I see in the center, he's good.
Yeah.
What?
That looks good.
All right. Well, I'll see you guys at 6:30. I'll be back on.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Okay, thank
Use that panelist link to get back in, right?
Yes, I will not be that guy. I promise you.
All right, thank you.
Hey, I was that guy earlier.
Yeah,
Bill.
I'm just gonna turn my video off and we'll stay on.
That's fine.
New
Yeah.
sound. If you want to mute your sound and video while you do what you need to do, great. Okay,
Awesome.
good.
All right.
So
feeling pretty
now we're
good.
just waiting for.
And I hit
Did
spotlighted him.
Yeah,
you guys
he's
go
holding
through? Can you guys hear me right now?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Okay. Did you guys go through all the switches and the order of everything before I got on? We're all clear on all of that.
If you want to review it again, Theo? We sure can.
It wouldn't hurt maybe to talk it through
Okay, good.
real quick, just so I've got it, partly because I have to be the person who pitches stuff off. Do you want to run the slides too right now? We got 10 minutes. Want to just run them through, Will, as we do this? So you, right. Okay. And then after that, I guess there's this, my slide comes on, right?
Yep.
And I come on and I welcome people. I say the chat is on.
Mm-hmm.
Explain we're going to be interactive. I invite them to chat to this question. And then as they chat, I will just say a little bit about the purpose and how the program's going to go. And
Theo, one second. You want that question to pop in at 7 o'clock too, not at 6:55, right? Like
no, right.
before.
No, and not at 7. I want it to pop in after I've started talking.
Yep. So we do. Can you guys hear me? Sorry,
Yeah.
I turned my mic off.
Yeah.
All right. So we do this slide, and then I'm going to stop sharing, and it's going to go to Theo. He's going to be the only person up there. He's going to talk, and whenever he gets to that question, I'm going to.
I'll just drop it in. I'll drop it in when I hear him say.
Right. Right.
Okay, cool.
And I'll share it, and he's going to talk over this slide for a little bit, and if it seems organic for me to just stop sharing again, I'll do that, and
Right.
then
Push it back to me. That's right.
I'm going
And
to
then
stop
I'll
my
just say a
video.
little, I've got a few talking points about the purpose of the program and what we're going to do. And then I'm going to introduce Heather.
And
So
that's,
Heather's
yep.
slide comes up.
Mm-hmm.
And then Heather comes on and she's going to talk for about 3 minutes. And then she's going to say something to the effect of, now going to look forward to talking to James Foreman. And then I guess whenever she shifts, I don't know the exact cue, you might ask her that when she comes on. Yeah, we do this slide, but it's pretty quick,
Yeah.
you know.
Right.
And then he's back on and they're on together, basically, right?
Right.
Um,
Gallery view on those two.
Gallery view of those two.
And then after they're through, Heather hopefully will pitch it back to me. If she doesn't, then you'll just know that when she stops, you know, it's time for me to come back. And I will say a little more about what we're going to do and how questions work. I'm going to explain Bill Lamar's role, introduce him. And then after that, I'm going to do a pretty short introduction of James Foreman Jr., who will talk briefly, maybe 10 minutes, maybe 12. So it's not like a 30-minute presentation like last week. And when he's finished, I'll come back on. We don't throw up his title slide again, I think, when he talks now, right? Because we saw him earlier. Right. So I'll come back on and then I'll do the group sharing. I'll say we're going to, a couple times tonight, we're going to share some groups. Here's some information. And here are 2, and there's Voices for a Second Chance.
Oh, yeah.
I'll do a couple of sentences, then I'll go through those 4. What a great logo there on that task force. That's sharp looking. I like the arrow there. It's good.
Yeah, we're doing 4 groups in this first go
We're
round.
doing 4, right?
Yeah.
Those 4. Okay. Then when that's done, it comes back to me, I guess, and I introduce Bill Lamar. And I'm not going to say much more. I made a quick transition. Now we're glad to have, I would have talked about him earlier, Reverend Lamar, who's going to make some comments and then engage in a conversation. And I guess then we, put up his title slide, right? And then he talks for a couple of minutes and then he's going to bring Foreman in and you just follow his lead on that. You know, he may go to questions really quickly. He might talk for a couple minutes. We should run through this all when everybody's together, when he and Foreman are both on, and we can talk about it a little more. And then after that, at some point around 8 o'clock, he will transition to me back for audience Q&A, and Kim and I will have been in touch and looking for questions. And then we'll do that for 15 or 20 minutes. And then I'll do more info sharing on groups. And there are 5. These 2 that James Foreman worked with. So I may spend a little more time on those. And the other 2 are.
Wait, let me get the time. What time? Oh, there it is, because it's in different places.
This is
okay, great.
8:20, hopefully. Yeah.
Yep, I got my 5 org.
Right. And then these 4. And then the final one is one that is that New York Avenue is responsible for this returning. And I will, this is actually people are to contact me if they're interested. And I have another comment I'm going to add about this. So anyway, that's the last one. And when that's done, that goes down and I will say something like, oh no, then I will introduce Bill Lamar. And we go to Bill and he does his, 4-minute, 3-minute, inspirational, why you ought to get involved, whatever he'll do. And then after that, it comes back to me and I will say, I'm going to open up chat right then, I think, Kim, first thing. And
what time is your chat opening up at?
8:25.
Okay, got that.
And the 2 questions are, and we don't need a slide for this, Will. It's just, I'll say what they are.
Yeah, read them to me.
Hold on, what am I asking? Right, what was particularly helpful to you in this program, and what ideas do you have about how you can help with the issues we've discussed? I don't think we need a slide for that.
Wait, what was helpful for you?
What was most helpful for you in this program?
Mhm.
And number two is, what ideas do you have about how you can help? And then we invite them to write that into chat, Kim, and then we'll collect it. I thought we got some really good comments last time, actually.
Mhm.
And I would like to get even more. So we can make it part of the report. It also helps to look at how to frame, we have a third program with James. And I didn't learn, Will, whether the October 3rd is on or not. When
Okay.
he comes on at 6:30, he may clarify that. If he doesn't, we just put to be determined.
Got it.
So these comments they make at the end will be helpful in terms of us getting a sense of, what we want to do in the next program.
That's at
And then I will
8:23.
do, then I will turn to Avis. Then we do the Avis moment. And I will say, we have a few announcements that you'll want to hear. But before we do that, I want to introduce Avis Buchanan, who's the director of the Public Defender Service in Washington, D.C., who has her own announcement. And then we go to Avis. And then if you want to bring in James part of that time. And then when they're done, it comes back to me for real quick 2 announcements. And that last slide, which we have to finalize depending on what we learn.
Right.
Is that slide 10 on upcoming programs? And you said there was another slide after upcoming programs?
No,
No,
that's
this is the last slide.
That's the very
Okay.
end.
And this is slide 12, but it doesn't matter.
And then I'm going to, we'll call on Heather again at the end to close things. So there's a lot of switching around here compared to our previous program.
All right.
I think, Will, for the last event, we put the upcoming event slide back on as the very last thing, I believe.
Mhm.
Right.
So
Mhm.
probably makes
Mhm.
sense to do that again to end on that.
Cool.
Hey, Theo,
Yeah,
question for you on your setup. You've got a monitor to your right, I guess, or another computer.
I have a laptop to the left that I have talking points on. I could use, I'm trying to decide whether that's easier or using sort of notes from, paper.
You're sometimes looking away from the cameras.
Yeah.
Why I bring it up.
Yep. See, last time I had the camera on the other monitor on the laptop, but the problem with that is I couldn't see now. I could have entered this thing from my laptop, I guess.
Well, I think the setup here looks good.
Yeah.
It looks better than any of the previous ones, in my
Yeah.
opinion. So
Yeah, and I may use the written notes. I got to look at it here, but I have notes and I know what I'm saying mostly anyway, but I try to follow the notes because the time is so darn tight, that I hate to just riff it,
It looks good. Just, occasionally you're looking away from the camera a bit and just something to be aware
And
of.
what's the best strategy on the glasses? If I look down more, there's less glare now, right?
yeah, I
If you look
mean,
up, it's worse. Yeah.
it's kind of weird, but yeah, look down and straight ahead.
Yeah, it's a little better. Yeah,
Well, till
that's all right. There'll be some of it. Okay, sounds like we got the flow. That seem right?
I think we're good.
We're good on our part.
And you've got all the links at different times?
I sure do. I have them in 2 sets. One is a set of the first 4, and then the second 5, and they're both all ready to go in the
You've
document.
got the link for James's book for that.
Yep, and that's already in. So as soon as I hear and he has a book, I have the link ready to go into chat.
I may
Such
have
a-
mentioned the book 2 different times, but you don't have to send the link both times. Just kind of-
Right out.
I'm going to mention it early on, and then I may or may
Mhm.
not mention it later on. I haven't quite said what I'm decided what I'm going to say in my short introduction later.
Okay, good, good. All right, what else? Are you okay with your setup otherwise, Theo? Do you
Yeah,
feel?
I need to download a couple things and do a little so, but I'm if you know I'm good. And when if James and Bill come on at the same time and Heather, we ought to talk it through like we just did one more time with everybody.
Okay.
I
Okay,
take
yep.
the lead and talk it through, and then you guys just do the camera work
Mhm.
and the slides as we get to it. How's that?
Sounds good. Absolutely.
To
So,
question-
question about hiding non-video participants, is that checked, or can you guys
no,
see
we haven't
me up
done
there?
that yet. I think we should go ahead and
I'm
go
not
ahead
sharing
and do
my
that.
video, so if I disappear, then you'll know you've done it right.
Yeah.
And that's on mainly on the host computer, right? Like the
Oh, right. You may have to do that now, Joe. Yeah. Yeah, it's not even letting me have that tool anymore. So I'm still here. Wait, let me go back up to the participants
Joe-
and see if I could do it from
Yeah,
mine.
Joe's still
I'm
here.
still here. I'm just looking. Remind me where that is again. That's under.
If you look at, I believe it's under participants, you see has that arrow. That's if it's because that's where it was for me before you came on, and then on the top of the screen, I'm gonna come out of participants.
Basically, I right click up where our heads are, like right click on one of the videos.
Yeah, that's the
and-
other one. There you go. I'm gonna do that on mine. I'm gonna just do my.
Yeah.
Well, you guys let me know if I'm gone. I still see me, but am I gone for you guys? Oh,
Mm,
hide self view.
Well, you got to turn your camera off.
Well, we can do that, and I can.
Okay, yeah, it was checked already. So
Yeah.
it's back to
All
being
right.
checked again. So non-video is hidden.
Oh, Will, is that green box the PowerPoint? Hey, Will,
No,
and
no,
when
the
we-
green box is just my background. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know if I'm going to be able to disappear from your view, but I think what's going out to the attendees
Mhm.
is going to not show what's happening up there. Basically,
right. Well,
we're
I have my
spotlighting.
attendee computer
Yeah,
on.
I don't see you anymore, Will.
Okay.
You don't?
I see
well,
Theo, myself, and Kim.
Yeah, I still see you, Kim.
there you go. You almost have to go to my name, my view of me on your screen. You almost have to do the same thing because I had to do that to you. I had to go to the three dots above your head. Like I still see Joe. Now, when I go, oh, well, Joe, you're the boss, so it's not letting
Well,
me get rid of you.
I just stopped your video.
Okay.
You didn't stop it completely somehow.
Yeah, you just had a black screen, but you were still there. Now you're gone.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
I had to click it a couple of times to make it a different way. So,
And
and
now
I
I
also,
should.
yep, there you go.
Now I should be gone.
Yep.
You are. Yeah. So
I
we're
just
out
turned
of
off mine. So yeah, we're good.
All right.
there.
Now-
Will, when we were
Mhm.
moving from on the slides to the participants, can we, is it, that's the way it's gonna, now, can you just go to the next slide? Just go down or, good, okay, all right. But when you, if you go spotlight Theo, let me see what that looks like.
So Theo is spotlighted right now,
Okay, oh, you're sharing the screen, that's right.
and I'm sharing a screen. So they should see his box above my shared screen on the participants view. Do you, or the attendees?
Yeah, I have mine side by side, which is fine. I'm gonna try side by side speaker and side by side gallery. Yeah, I'm gonna do side by side gallery. Okay, that's just my view.
And then if I stop share, it should go back to speaker view on Theo if he's spotlighted.
Mhm.
So
Interesting. My participants popped up. They weren't there when it was in the other. It's like it's too much for the screen to bear. Okay.
all right, we are expecting the other folks right at 6:30. So
All right. I need to order some pizza because I'm not cooking tonight.
Yeah,
I'll
I'm
be
sure
right
it's
back
good.
too. If they come in, just kind of greet them and look at their sound. I'll be right back.
All right. It's kind of annoying. This you're in a practice session, attendees cannot join. It's right on top of the controls on the speaker view. Like
I know.
on my
Like-
screen, I'm like, this is not helpful for a practice.
Don't hit it by mistake. Right. It's just-
Yeah. Seriously.
Report.
So that room has a yellow wall and an orange wall.
Yeah.
Yes, it does.
Yeah. It's certainly better without the fan on, and it definitely looks better than before.
Yeah, and the framing is better just because it's not coming from his laptop looking up at him and across to the side wall. It's going straight on and looking at the back wall. And he said it was the same camera. It's obviously a different computer, so
Yeah.
it's a different camera either way, but it's better. Yeah. Happy about that.
Yep.
And I got comments from other folks from the church just saying that, you know, the fan was going and it was, and I was like, yeah, we'll fix that. We'll get to it.
Yeah,
I think Janine was one of the people who missed
sure, probably. She has lots to say.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, I should have caught that. I don't know. This is good timing wise because last time
You were dealing with stuff.
Yeah, I don't remember exactly what all. I know I was having to re-enter the information, and then you were dealing with slides. Like we all were kind of independently making sure some things were going, and we didn't have the time to sit around and
Right.
fine
few
tune.
minutes. Yeah, the few minutes here and there are really helpful. Like, where we can ask Theo to change his shirt. You know.
Yes.
To a very light blue shirt.
Yes. And we just, this is good. We just didn't have that time last time. So this is good.
Yeah, this has a lot more buffer. It feels better.
Yeah, I could not believe it when I saw that video later. Just that fan, it just, looked like a tornado above Theo's head. It was bad.
I wonder if there is software out there that can like pick the frames that would match each other and like get rid of the other frames, like the flicker, just match up all the, just kind of.
Right. I see what you're saying.
I don't know.
I mean, I know you can crop the video. You could potentially
True.
Right.
Cut it off that way. Yeah, I mean that's the bad thing with these webcams is you can't really zoom in and out, and you're kind of limited.
And Joe, we're meeting tomorrow morning. Is that right?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't think I ever got back to you on a time.
Oh,
but yes, yeah, I'll shoot you an email.
Okay. Cool.
Maybe like 9:30, 10, somewhere in there.
Yeah, that's good.
I've actually tomorrow's become more complicated than I thought it was going to.
Well, in that case, we're free to do it next week. I mean, there's no pressure to do it by the end of this week. So
well, maybe so. I've got some complications that came in for. I was going to send you and Heather an email. I may not be able to make the rehearsal tomorrow.
Okay.
I've got something with work that I didn't think I was going to have to be around for, but it looks like I have to be there for it.
Welcome back, Reverend Lamar.
Yes, sir.
You are on time, 6:30 on the dot.
Right up and
down. Throughout, you kind of come on and go off and come on and go off. You'll get a request from Joe is the host, and he'll be sending probably a video request to start your video when it's about time for you to start. And if you see that box pop up, just accept it and we'll get you where you need to be on the screen. So
sounds good.
Guys, can you hear me? I didn't have my mic on earlier. Do you?
Yeah, we can hear you. Can you hear us?
Nice.
Is this a lot better?
Can you hear us?
Yes. Is this a lot better?
It is.
Yeah.
Sounds better, yeah.
Okay.
Makes the shirt look good.
Oh, well, there you go. Makes me look important. Microphone on my shirt. So are you far away, Bill? Are you guys in the DC area? Or are you?
No, actually, in the Blue Ridge Mountains.
Ah, nice.
Yeah. So
Nice.
it's beautiful scenery, as you know.
Yeah. I was down below Charlottesville with some friends in a cabin down at the tail end kind of, but boy, it is lovely down there.
It is indeed. I could get used to it.
Well, can be your summer home, maybe.
I'll try to make that happen.
Talk to the board of trustees about that.
Yeah. We won't get too far, but and rightfully so, I'd say, rightfully so.
Yeah, but anyway, no, good to be able to visit it though, right? I mean,
Yeah, oh yeah.
And so you're clear on your part here tonight? And
Definitely.
Yeah.
I've gone through the run-up show. Everything's very clear. So
yeah. And his remarks will be fairly brief. He wanted to do dialogue, and he has a lot of involvement with education for incarcerated people,
Okay.
Maya Angelou School and some other stuff. He'll probably talk about that, but he's not going to give a long talk. He talked almost, more normal address last time and more dialogue. So you'll be, it'll be only a few minutes, he'll talk briefly and then you'll have a chance to sort of engage.
Great.
Oh my goodness.
Hey there.
Hey.
Somebody's on their phone.
Yeah.
Oh, hey, it's James. I'm just like a couple minutes from being in my office.
Okay.
I just wanted to let y'all know I didn't want you to think I had missed it. So I'm going to just disconnect, but I'm going to connect back in from my computer in like 3 minutes. Okay.
All right.
Great.
Sounds good. Thanks.
We appreciate it, James.
All right. Thank you.
So are we going to trust his the sound on his computer differently than we did last time? Remember, we were trying to do that test. I mean, it's now 6:34. So.
Well, I never got an answer back whether or not he found the adapter to allow that mic to plug in. So I'm assuming he did not.
He'll be just doing without a microphone.
Yeah. And actually, I mean, when we did the rehearsal with him the first time, it didn't sound that good. He was in a different spot. When he did the presentation, I thought it sounded good. So
yeah,
if he has it, we can walk through it real quick, but I'm assuming he did not find it.
Hey, Joe, I don't know, maybe it's my screen. Your name is pop. Okay. I was gonna say,
we will be muted, so that won't happen. I
don't know what other people see, so sometimes it's like, I'm only seeing what I see.
So I just spotlighted Theo, and we'll be in spotlight or gallery view, one or the other.
So we won't see all that. Right?
And we won't be talking once it's rolling. So yeah, between the two.
Yep. This is exciting, guys.
Yeah. So did I hear that the October date may change? Is that?
Yeah, we're going to confirm. I don't know that the date is going to change necessarily, but it's not fully confirmed.
The date, they had tentatively agreed to October 3rd as and now there was some question as to whether that was a day that would work for him, and they weren't sure they could confirm. I was waiting to hear. I assume he will have. We should ask him that when he comes on. I'll ask him.
Yeah.
But we may just have to say to be determined. James Foreman, follow-up discussion, date to be determined, like that.
Hey everyone, good evening.
There she is. Hello.
Hello.
We're getting a wicked storm, tornado craziness here. So if you lose me, it might be weather related.
Yeah. We had it here in Silver Spring, Heather. I almost called you actually to say if mine won't go on, I'm you're on, and if yours won't go on, I'm on, probably is kind of how it would go. But,
sounds like a good plan.
But I hopefully we'll both be here.
Good.
Is that John?
No, that wasn't from me. Who is that?
Oh, I don't know.
I love that you thought that was John.
I thought it was John.
He's watching the Tour de France right now.
Oh,
I'm gonna guess. Yeah.
might have been.
Hello, Reverend
There he
Lamar.
is.
Good evening.
Hey, Heather, how are you?
I'm hanging in there. How are you?
I'm well. Good to see you. And
Good.
I got your email. I'm going to keep looking for someone. I hope I'm able to help you.
Thanks. If you know of anybody, send them my way. We're looking. Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Theo, I feel like you're in a different room every time we do this.
Just the lighting changes.
We've been fiddling with the lighting. I have two rooms next to each other, and the other one is. Anyway, this one's a little better, but yes, I do tend to move around. Should we want to talk through this? James is coming, but we're only going to have a couple minutes. I think he's kind of clear on his part. Why don't we just kind of talk through this?
I agree.
So we're all. Hold on, let me get my.
I have a quick question. Do you know, Theo, what he prefers to be called? Professor Foreman, Dr. Foreman, Mr. Foreman?
It wouldn't be doctor because he has a
juris doctorate. Yeah,
they don't generally use that term. I'd say Mr. Foreman or.
There he is.
Oh, there he is.
We can ask him.
Oh, good evening. I was just asking what your preferred title is. Should I reference you as Professor Foreman, Mr. Foreman? What do you prefer?
James.
Okay. All right.
Is that an option?
Yes, you get to decide what you want to be called. So yes, I will call you James. Thank you. And welcome. Good to see you tonight.
Thank you. Good to see you.
Hey, James, we were just going to go through a really quick 5-6 minute run through of the whole flow so we know who does what and the pitch offs and the transitions. And so let's do that real quick. We'll start right at 7. I'll come on first this time instead of Heather with the welcome. I'm going to open the chat. I'm going to ask them a question. I'm going to ask if you could change one thing about our criminal justice system, what would it be? And give people time to comment on that. We'll tally these answers. We'll make that part of the report later. They'll do that. I'll make a couple of brief comments about last week and this. Then I will introduce Heather. Do you want to run through the slides? Yeah. I'll introduce Heather. Her title slide will come up. She will make some comments about summary and observations and what people said from last time. There's Heather. And it'll be that view. And then after you're through for however much time you take on that, you turn to a conversation and some questions for James, and then it'll go to gallery view, I guess. So I don't know if you want to go to that and see how that looked so we're aware.
Yeah, so I'll share a slide when you mention his name.
Right, good.
And during that time, we are going to sort out whose video is on and whose is off. And then when we're all set, we'll come back in with just the two. So Theo, your video will be off.
Right.
And then Reverend Lamar's video will be off, and then it'll be gallery view with the two of you.
Right. And then that will go on till about 7:20 or so, a little later, but you kind of need to monitor that, Heather, and you're good at that kind of at some point say, well, I got one last question, or however you do that transition. And then at that point, I'll give just a few more instructions about the rest of the program. I'll explain that we're going to turn our attention mainly to looking at how we can assist currently and formerly incarcerated folks. That'll be the main focus of the rest of the evening. And then I'll turn it over to James. I'll introduce you just really briefly, James. And then you make what remarks you want to do on that topic. I understand they're going to be fairly brief. You said 10 to 12 minutes, maybe a little more, something like that.
Yes, exactly.
And then after that, it comes back to me, and I will do what we did last week, which is share some information about some organizations working in this area, and we're going to go a little faster probably than we did last time, but I'm going to share 4 here, these 2, and then these 2, and then it comes out of that and back to me again, and then I will turn it over to you, Reverend Lamar, and you can make whatever brief comment you want to make. Yeah, there'll be a title slide. Yeah, thank you. I keep forgetting that. Thank you, Will. There'll be a title slide, and then it'll go to you, Bill. We can highlight him. Yeah.
Great.
And then you can make whatever brief comments just in response, but then you turn to a conversation with James at whatever point you're ready to do that. You've got about 20 minutes, you know, for that. And hopefully, and then they'll probably be on, you guys will have them on gallery view, the side by side most of the time, probably.
Right. Yeah.
And everybody will be trying to figure out what that is over Reverend Lamar's shoulder there, whether that is a cat.
Well, look, you know, I can take it down if
no, I only noticed it. You mentioned it earlier.
it's a llama. It's a llama. Hey, what can I say?
I like it.
Okay, so we'll do that till about 8. Then again, just kind of, you know, monitor the time, and around, you know, 8, you wrap this up. If it's a couple minutes after, okay, but try not to go way after. And then I will, and Kim and I will pick some questions from the audience, and I'll ask as many as I can, James, and touch on as many questions as we can. And then after that, we'll do some quick sharing on some other groups. You got those slides, Will? And then we'll go, and then I'm going to turn it back to you, Bill, for our closing comments, exhortation for folks to get involved, whatever you want to say about that. And
Theo, I've got from the run-up show, that's just a couple of minutes, right?
Yeah, 3 or 4 minutes. Yeah,
yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah. 3-4 minutes is fine. Just kind of why this matters, and you know why people ought to be involved. Your stuff, you're of course great at doing.
All right, sounds good.
And then it'll come back to me, and I will thank some people. I want to thank you in particular there, James. So be sure to be around. You'll be done, but we'll want to say a word to you, and you might, you know, say a quick word back or something, but no remarks from you. Just it'll be thank you and all. And then I'm going to open chat again, and I'm going to ask people to make some comments. We'll collect the data. I'm going to ask what ideas do they have about how they can help. See what kind of things people have been thinking about or write, and then some quick announcements, and we are done. We had one question, James, about the follow-up program, the kind of conversation with you. We had talked about tentatively October 3rd, and Colleen was going to check. Does that work to announce, or are we not ready to commit and announce that yet? I think you're muted, so.
Sorry about that. I need to sit down. I wasn't able to get a hold of my wife's work schedule. Is it okay if we hold off on that?
We can do date to be determined. No problem. I'll just say.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that.
We're glad to announce we're going to have just another hour conversation, follow up after people have a chance to think about this. It'll be probably in October, and date to be determined. We'll get back to people. How's that? Yeah. You got that, Will, in terms of changing that slide?
Yep, already changed.
Yep, figured you had. Good.
Great. Theo, I had a question for you. The way we're doing it is we have Reverend Lamar at 8:23 doing his closing. Then you come back on and do the questions for chat. Is that correct? You kind of had them in the same line. I need to clean it up.
When I come on at the very end, in that part that says closing comments, at that point, we'll turn the chat on. And I will pose the questions kind of right away.
Okay, that's where you want the questions at closing comments.
Yeah, before the announcements. Then
okay, got it.
Can be commenting, you know, during the announcements. And we'll try to get them to stay. We know sometimes people fade out, and, you know, like I say, I'll do a thank you to James, and then we'll open the chat, and we'll make these announcements, and then you'll go back to Heather at the very end for a benediction. some words of closing.
Great. All right, great.
Sounds good.
Okay.
So James, just for the opening with our dialogue, our questions back and forth, I was gonna touch back upon defunding the police and how that's kind of a lightning rod, and a little bit more about that. There was an 18-year-old shot by the MPD yesterday in Southeast, Dion K. So kind of how do people respond? What is the right thing to do around that? And then also,
Are there any details known about?
he did have a gun that he was supposedly, they have released the body cam footage. He was in the process of throwing 100 feet away, but there was one guy running and he was there, he had a gun. But an 18-year-old
in Congress Heights.
Congress Heights. And so protesters were out. It happened at 4. They were at Bowser's house and at the police station by 6. So, and you know, this is the Black community waking up to one less Black future. So so I wanted to talk about that. And then also wanted to talk a little bit more about whether you have any relationships with police officers. We've talked a lot about looking at the union contracts and the budgets. In the community organizing world, we talk a lot about no permanent enemies, no permanent allies. Do we build relationships with people within the police department? There was a really great podcast that New York Times did a couple of days ago with a Black police officer in Flint, and how he was really ashamed to be a part of the force and how difficult it was for him to stay in his position. So what is it like to be a police officer right now? And so those were kinds of the things that I wanted to touch upon in our dialogue. Does that sound good?
That sounds great.
Okay.
So that's before the dialogue with Reverend Lamar?
Yeah, that's kind of the opening 15 minutes.
We've got about 20 minutes where we're kind of a little summary from last time and picking up on some issues.
Okay.
We've got, in terms of that, about 135 people who have signed up for this session that didn't sign up before. And all the ones who signed up before are invited. So, but a number of people, there'll probably be 100, 150 people who were not there last time. So we just, not too much time, a little bridge, and then Heather will talk with you, picking up on some of the conversations from last time. Then it comes back to me. I'll introduce you, then you make your remarks, and then Reverend Lamar will engage after that.
Good, great. And you said your introduction is going to be shorter than the one
of your, yes, very short.
Good.
Yeah, very short.
Love it.
I'll say very little.
Shorter the better.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, so we have about 10 minutes. So do we need to do any additional sound and visual checks for everyone? Joe and Will, how does everyone look?
Good. I think Theo, if you could move your mic up just slightly, it'll be a little better.
Yeah, that better? Even higher?
Yeah, right in there is good. Go ahead and say something.
Yeah, well, welcome to the webinar, Joe. Glad to have you with us this evening.
All right, that sounds good. Thank you.
I'm good.
So just as great, and as a heads up, once we start the webinar, we'll have that welcome screen on. You want to make sure that you're muted. And then I'll start the recording about a minute before. So you might want to be muted. Well, you will want to be muted for that. Theo, you what, about 6:58, since we're not asking the questions, just to have that screen up for about a minute or two, guys? Versus 5 minutes. Give enough time for people to come in. I think 2 minutes feel like enough.
It's fine with me.
Okay.
Yeah, fine with me.
All right.
James, did you start classes this week, teaching?
I keep muting because I'm trying to be responsible. Yeah, last week.
And virtual, in person?
Different people are doing different things.
Okay.
I'm teaching virtually mainly because the in-person is going to be like everyone's wearing masks and they're super far away from one another. And I feel like it's really hard to connect with people when they're all masked up. But I don't know if that was the right decision or not, because connecting with people on Zoom is really hard too. So both options seem bad. I don't know whether I picked the better or the worse of the two bad options.
It's exactly what we're struggling with in the faith community. We're not doing in-person worship until Lent, which is February, but it is hard to connect on Zoom. People are on Zoom all week long, so come Sunday morning, the last thing they want to do is be on Zoom again. But in person seemed really hard and challenging as well.
Yep, and James, I wanted to say hello again. We met a while ago. I can't remember. It was some boutique shop where you were talking about your book, and we had an exchange, and just really appreciate your work and your thoughtfulness.
I appreciate that. I don't know what that shop was, but I like the idea of meeting you in a boutique shop.
Yeah. It was actually, and I should be more clear. It was like a boutique DC think tank kind of place.
Okay.
A small one, not like a big cap or something like that.
Was it Nikichi Taifa? Did she bring us together?
She was in the room. I'm trying to remember some of the other folks who were in the room, but it was an interesting room, mostly of folks in education, and you were talking about how your work and research impinges upon their world.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah, well, that's great. That's really great.
It sounds like those sermons we preach and then we don't remember, and somebody comes back to us and says, "Remember when you said?" And you're like, "Maybe."
Yeah, maybe yes, I do, or maybe not.
Phil, what are you guys doing for worship? Are you virtual?
We're totally Zoom, and we're like you. We won't be doing anything until the new year. The strange thing is that it has not negatively impacted our reach or really the work of ministry, except we should be connected with one another personally, but it's not safe to do so, and it hasn't adversely affected us. But I think that, like so many other things in the United States, falls along socioeconomic and class lines. It's because if you are pastoring people who are first responders on the line, you're in trouble. But people who worship at places like Metropolitan, probably like New York Avenue, they can adjust much more quickly to things like that.
I'm really glad we're not making the week to week kind of wrestling match of, are we going to do it? Are we not going to do it? Like, we just made the call and said, we're not doing it. And that's been freeing to then have space to move forward with ministry.
Exactly. People have been gracious and patient, and I have a group, as probably do you, Heather. They are not bashful or retiring people. They let you know what they're thinking. They call, they write, they email, they yell when they have to. And
Sounds like good church people.
Yeah, and I've only had really 2 people to try to press a claim to get back into the congregation. So I'm like, statistically, that it doesn't amount to much opposition to what we're doing.
Good. Well, great to be here with you guys tonight. Looking forward to this.
And thank you for your hospitality.
Yeah. All right, we're gonna start muting and getting video set up for this thing to get going. Thank you guys and ladies. Sorry.
All right, all the videos are on.
This is Kim. We are recording and we are going to start the webinar and allow attendees in.
Good evening. I'm Theo Brown, Director of the McClendon Scholar Program at New York Avenue Presbyterian Church. I want to welcome you to tonight's webinar on the topic of after the protests, what do we do now? The McClendon Scholar Program is in its 14th year of hosting professors, authors, and other thought leaders who can educate and inspire our congregation and the community at large to be more effective in our work for social justice. Now, this is the second webinar on this topic, and we're delighted to have you join us. Most of you were present for the first program we had about a week ago with Professor James Foreman, but we also have over 100 new registrations. So many people here tonight were not able to join us last time. I just want you to say a couple of things about the program and we'll dive right in. Our program tonight is going to be very interactive, lots of dialogue and discussion opportunities for you also to give input. Here in a moment, I'm going to invite you to give some input, and then later again near the end, I'm going to ask for your comments. And then also there'll be a question and answer period. You might want to look, if you're not familiar with webinar, the Zoom webinar, there are at the bottom some functions we'll be using. The first is the chat function, which is open now, actually. And in a moment, I want to invite you to make an entry there. And then there'll be the Q&A function, which we'll be explaining more later, where you can write in your own questions that we'll direct to James later in the evening. In terms of the chat, we want to start by asking you a question. We'll also give you a chance to practice the chat function. Let me ask you this question. If you could change one thing about our criminal justice system, what would it be? What comes to mind? Think of the first thought or two you have and type it in. We'd like to see some ideas from you about what one thing you would change if you had the power to do so in our criminal justice system. We'll be looking at these. We're going to tally them, and we'll be making it part of the report. We were very curious and interested to see what comes to mind of what you think is important to focus on. Now, the purpose of this webinar is the same as last week's, in that we want to give you information and insight about how you can be involved more effectively in dealing with some of these issues around policing, criminal justice reform, and the needs of people returning from incarceration. So what we're going to do tonight is we're going to begin with a little bit of a review about what we talked about last week. Just a few moments to remind you some of the things James talked about and that we discussed with him, and then to begin to engage in conversation with him. So I'm going to, I'll give you a few more details later, but right now we'll start, and I want to invite Heather Shortledge, who is the pastor of New York Avenue Presbyterian, to give us some context and comments from last week, and then have a conversation with James about some of those issues. And then afterwards, I'll come back and explain our focus for the rest of the evening. For those of you who did not hear an introduction about James last week, there's much to say, but suffice to say that he's one of our country's leading voices for criminal justice reform, and of course, author of the Pulitzer Prize winning book, Locking Up Our Own: Crime and Punishment in Black America. So I want to turn it over to Heather at this point.
Good evening and welcome on behalf of the New York Avenue Presbyterian Church. We're really delighted that you are here this evening. Many of you were here last week on the 25th for part one of this program. If you are new, welcome. We're glad that you're here tonight. And if you are returning, we're glad that you're here for the second part of the conversation. Last week, we had some really engaging dialogue with James Foreman Jr. About a variety of topics, and we want to spend just a few moments talking a little bit more about the things we talked about last week for those of you who were not here, to catch you up before we kind of move forward in the conversation. Last week, we talked I loved the phrase, the failure of imagination, in trying to figure out reforms and policing. So we talked a lot about using the imagination and the failure of our imagination. We talked a lot about history. It was very interesting when James Foreman pointed out that we are just 50 years of this side of the civil rights movement, and the history of all that has accumulated to get us where we are. We talked about auditing police budgets and looking at union contracts. We danced around that word, defund the police, and what that means, and if there is better language to talk about that. So it was a very active and robust conversation last week, and I just want to follow up with a few questions with James. First, I wanted to start out with kind of the police culture. We talk a lot about being on this side of the police, but what is it actually like to be a police officer right now? Do we have an obligation or a duty to build relationships with people who are in the police force? I know in the community organizing world, we toss around that phrase, no permanent enemies, no permanent allies. So what should our relationship be with the police as we work for justice and reform? I wonder if you could speak to that, James.
Absolutely. I have tried to start my video, but I'm being told that I can't.
We'll give you a moment to see. There we go. There you are.
All right. So thank you very much for having me for another night of conversation. And, you know, I think what makes this conversation so good is how many advocates and activists and others that are interested in this work and everyday citizens that care about these issues are joining in the conversations. I can see even from the chat that there's a lot of people that have thought, given a lot of thought to this question of, you know, what's the one thing that they would do. So, you know, in terms of your question, I think it depends on whether when you say relationships with the police, I think it depends on, are we talking about the police as an institution, or are we talking about individual officers? Because it seems to me, based on my experience, I know tons of really good, caring people. And there's lots of research that shows that there are many people who go into policing because they want to make their community better. And I'm thinking particularly here about majority Black communities, which is where I have lived for most of my life and where most of my research is based in. But you could also say even beyond that. But, you know, a lot of people, there's a history of being asked to join the police department because you want to make your community better. You want to make a contribution to your neighborhood. And I know lots of officers for whom that is a big part of the motivation. I mean, it's not the only motivation, but it's part of the motivation. And so it seems to me it's really crucial that we engage with police officers like we would any individuals in a one-on-one kind of way, in a caring way, in a way that encourages their best selves to come forward. I also think, as a matter of kind of political organizing and labor organizing, that, you know, there are a lot of officers that don't feel represented by the current unions. They don't feel like when the union speaks and is incredibly hostile, opposed to any measure of reform that defends officers, even those that have done the worst things. I know lots of officers who will say and who believe privately, you know, that's not what I believe, and that's not what I wish my union were saying. So I actually think there is a movement, right? There are labor organizers who are right now trying to help those officers that don't feel like their current union is representing them, find an alternative voice. But I guess I would say, okay, so that's individual officers. But in terms of our relationship to the police as a unit or as an institution, that's where I think things change. I mean, it seems the history of Black America in this country is a simultaneous history of being over-policed and over-punished and yet underprotected. And so it seems to me that our institutional response has to be to get police departments to recognize those historic and present day flaws, and then set up a set of strategies, and we can get into more detail, a set of strategies for what it's going to take to change departments, including, as we talked about last week, shrinking departments when appropriate to achieve those goals.
Thank you. I know within New York Avenue, we've had a pretty heated and robust conversation among leaders as we have provided protest hospitality. So we've opened our building for bathrooms and snacks and water for protesters and marchers and people coming in off the streets. We have made the tough call to not allow law enforcement inside our building because protesters have not felt safe if law enforcement are in that space. And yet we are a church that says we welcome all people and we are not exclusive. And so that feels, it doesn't feel like it aligns with our mission, but how would we ever get those two groups to feel safe together? And how do we work on those relationships?
Well, when you say you don't allow law, and I don't know the inside of that decision, but you mean that you don't allow them in the moment of the protest and the police response to the protest?
Correct. So if an officer comes to the door and says, "Can I use the bathroom?" We say, "There's a Starbucks or a McDonald's down the street. We'd prefer you to use that one." We don't let them inside while we have protesters inside our building for hospitality.
Right. Well, so there the context matters to me. I mean, if you were to tell me that like you don't allow police officers to enter your sanctuary, like I don't.
No, that isn't. Please do not spread that rumor. That is not correct.
I would say that's a real problem. But yeah, I mean, I guess the context matters, and maybe if it may well be that the protesters feel like your church is the only place that they have to go in those moments, and the police have other options. The police officers are going to be welcome in other places, and they're worried that if police enter your space, they will enter it for the purpose of spying or gathering information. I mean, that's part of what's happening right now. So I guess I don't know all of the details, but I can certainly understand a decision. I could understand a set of facts which would lead to the decision that you've just described. And then I think it's incumbent upon, a church like yours to try to think of other contexts and other ways that you can have people engaged in relationship building. But I do want to say, and I think this is important, we've had a number of decades of relationship building style work. And it's important, it's essential, and I'm never going to give up on it. I'm somebody who, I teach a class called Inside Out, where I have law students that go every week and they study inside a Connecticut prison alongside men and women who are incarcerated in those prisons. And it's transformative educational experience for everybody involved. So I'm quite committed to the notion of building relationships across barriers and across walls. At the same time, I think that one of the problems that has happened in the last 30 or 40 years around police reform is that the relationship building has been one of the only things that's actually gotten funding. So there are opportunities for community relation style programs. There are opportunities for dialogue. But when you have that and then you don't have any accountability, that's not to me, that's not a deal that I'm willing to sign on to. And I think it's a deal that a lot of communities have been forced to sign on to. So I want there to be relationship building, but I don't want that to be the totality or anything like the totality of what counts as police reform.
Sure, certainly. Thank you. For those of you who are joining us from the DC area, you may have heard that MPD shot and killed an 18-year-old yesterday afternoon, Dion K, and protesters are out in the streets. I wonder, what would you say to those protesters, James? What is the response in the aftermath of something immediately?
I feel a little bit reluctant to answer the question with that sort of specificity because I'm not in DC, right? I'm not, I feel like that's a question that really should be for somebody who's on the streets right now and who knows kind of the context. But I guess, speaking more generally, I think that it's often very hard to know in the immediate. I'm a criminal defense lawyer, right? And so one of the things that we learn as public defenders is that in the immediate aftermath of any incident, you never know all the facts. You never know enough facts, right? And so I think you have to be very careful about reaching a conclusion based on facts that you learn in the first hour, first 2 hour, first 3 hour. Having said that, there are conclusions that can be drawn that are broader and that are more systemic, right? And so the question that I would be asking is, what is the leadership saying? What is the city leadership saying? What are the mechanisms of accountability that exist? What systems exist for the public to actually find out what happened and for there to be an accounting and a reckoning? We know in lots of jurisdictions, and I'm not saying this is true in DC, but I know we have people participating in this webinar from around the country, right? In lots of jurisdictions, there are all sorts of obstacles to actually getting to the truth. There are union contracts, which we talked about last week. There are law enforcement officer Bill of Rights that do things, for example, like say, investigators can't interview an officer that's been involved in a shooting until that officer has their lawyer and their union representative. And sometimes it's a 3 days or 1 week cooling off period. Sometimes they have the right to look at the evidence, all of the evidence, before they give their statement. These are not things that anybody normally who's charged with a crime has the right to, right? If I said to the police, well, hey, look, before my client is ever going to be investigated, you have to show them all the evidence that you have. Police and prosecutors laugh and would say that's ridiculous. Well, that's exactly what we do in many jurisdictions for police officers. So again, I would tell people to be clear and to be consistent in your demands and to make sure that your demands are broad enough that they will hold up to the truth, regardless of what the particular facts reveal themselves in this particular case.
Thank you. That is helpful. We talked a lot last week about that word defund the police and how that word didn't quite seem fitting or adequate, but it was the best word that we have in the moment. I wonder, we talked about auditing budgets and police union contracts, but how do you actually start moving money out of a police budget? Like, what are the strategies and the steps for doing that, especially for an average person that might be watching tonight that is wondering, how do we do that? What kind of power do we need to build, or what are the first steps in actually defunding a police budget?
Well, I think that there are particular organizations, right, that were shared last week with program participants that are doing that precise work, right? So it's about organizing. It's about getting together with other people in your community who are committed to that cause and going to whoever the decision maker is in your community. In DC, it's the city council, right? So the city council approves the police budget. So you have to go to your city council member and you have to say, you have to show up at the accountability hearings. You have to go to your city council member and you have to say, let's look at our police budget. Let's ask ourselves, how much are our police departments getting that could be going to other social service agencies? Why is it the case that a program like Violence Interrupters or ceasefire programs or credible messenger programs or restorative justice programs, why are they on the chopping block every year, right? Just barely being funded, can barely survive, have to come back every year to just live? And why is the police budget so guaranteed? So I guess I would say you have to find community-based partners that are committed to this cause. And as a group, you have to find allies on the city council. I know that the chair of the DC council, for example, Phil Mendelson, has been active and involved in trying to think about reform. And I know that there are a number of other members of the DC council who have been quite aggressive in thinking about police reform. So I think in some sense there is an audience there, again, in DC. But if you're not in DC, then go to the local Black Lives Matter chapter, right? And go to their next meeting and ask, what are we doing to organize around reducing our police budget and redirecting those resources to social services? So it's not like there's no magic formula. It's organizing in politics. And it's making our voices be louder than the voices of the status quo. But that's exactly what, you name, like John Lewis, we just honored his passing. Well, what did SNCC do? My dad and my mom were in SNCC with Mr. Lewis. Well, what did they do? They did community-based organizing of exactly the kind of sort that I'm describing. So I don't think it's like, I don't think it's not, there's no mystery. It's just putting in the work.
Thank you. And thank you for putting in the work and for making your voice loud enough so that it can be heard and encouraging us to make our voices loud. I'm looking forward to the continuation of this conversation tonight. I will turn it back to you, Theo, to move us along.
Yeah, thank you so much, both Heather and James. And again, a reminder that we did send out to people who registered last week the information about some of the groups James referred to. We're going to be sharing other information tonight about people engaged in this work, and we will send an email to all of you with both of those lists. So if you're hearing something and you'd like an idea about how you'd like to be involved, we will be following up with even more information about that tonight and in an email afterwards. Now, for the rest of this webinar, we want to focus primarily on the topic of the needs of currently and formerly incarcerated individuals. And we'll be sharing different ways to think about that issue. In a moment, we're going to hear from James Foreman Jr., who's going to talk briefly about that and some of the issues that these folks face as they are in prison or as they re-enter society. And then after a brief presentation, Reverend William Lamar, a pastor of the historic Metropolitan AME Church on M Street in downtown Washington, is going to make some brief comments and then engage in further conversation with James. Reverend Lamar is a well-known community leader, and his church is at the center of many different efforts to create a more just and compassionate society. And then after their dialogue, there'll be a chance for you to ask questions. I see a few of you have already asked questions. You can see what others have asked. You can add them. You can like questions if you want to do so. Just click on the like icon, and that helps us to see the questions that you think ought to be priorities. And then after that, we'll share some more information about groups. And then we will hear finally from Reverend Lamar again at the very close of the evening with a word for us about moving forward and getting involved. So as you listen to this topic, keep in mind some of the things we've talked about already in the broader issues of policing and criminal justice reform, but really want to think about those who are in the justice system, on the needs they have and how we can respond to that, both while incarcerated and returning. And I urge you to think about two things in everything you hear. What do you hear tonight that's helpful to you? Just keep in mind of that. It'll help you to remember it. And maybe there's an insight or two that you want to take with you. And then I would like to suggest another thing to think about as you hear the various discussions is, what thoughts do you have about how you can help? Some of you are already engaged in these issues. Are there things in addition you want to do? Some of you are concerned but not involved. So be thinking, what can I do to help? All right, at this point, we want to turn back and hear from James Foreman. I want to introduce him at some length last week. I'll just say a couple of things and then invite him to share some comments about those incarcerated and returning from incarceration. As many of you know, though he grew up in Atlanta in many ways, he was greatly shaped by his time here in Washington, D.C. and his work as a public defender. So much of his book, those who've read it, is about experiences in Washington. He's now professor of law at Yale and, of course, author of the best-selling book we mentioned earlier, and we shared that link with you. So, James, we're glad to have you here again this evening, and look forward to your comments and then more conversation with you.
Thank you. I appreciate that very much. And so, I spoke for a bit longer last time, and I'm not going to speak for as long this time because I was really interested in having a bit of a conversation with Reverend Lamar and also with y'all in the audience. So let me just say, and Theo, you I think you framed this well when you said, what can people do? And you asked the audience to really reflect on that question. So I want to think about that in the context of working on behalf of people who are returning from incarceration or people who have criminal justice convictions, who we know have been demonized and ostracized and excluded from so many opportunities. We pile shame and stigma upon them, and we make it incredibly difficult for them to reintegrate themselves and rebuild families and rebuild careers and rebuild lives, right? The things that we all would want to do and deserve to do. And so I guess I want to share one way of maybe a challenge to the audience, and it's a challenge that my mom posed to me many years back when I was in high school, and I shared a story about my father in our last conversation, and so I feel like I want to balance that out a little bit and tell you about a conversation that I had with my mother. So my parents were civil rights workers, and as I mentioned, so that meant we moved around a lot. I went to a lot of different schools. So I was in 10th grade now, and I was at yet again a new school. And when you're in a new school, you don't necessarily know your way around. It was the first or second day. I was in the bathroom, and I saw a group of kids kind of harassing another kid, making fun of this other kid. And I didn't really have the word. It wasn't physical, but it was verbal, and it was vicious. And I didn't have the words to describe what was happening, but I later would come to understand that this boy's it was his emerging sexual identity and orientation that was causing him to be the target of this bullying. I didn't know I didn't have words for it, but I knew it was wrong. And I went home and I talked to my mom about it. And I told my mom everything that had happened. And I then, child of civil rights workers, so I knew I had to have some ideas about what could be done. So, I had ideas for what the principal could do and the assistant principal to make the hallway safer and make our school a fairer place. I had ideas for what my mom could do. My mom was one of those parents who was always up in the school about this, that, and the other thing. And, as a kid, I never wanted her there. Very few kids want their parents to be up in the school. But I was like, all right, Mom, you're always up in the school and I never want you. Here's actually something you could do something about. I invite you. And my mom listened to all of this. And when I was done talking, she said, James, I appreciate you sharing this with me. I'm glad we have that kind of relationship where you would tell me about this. And I appreciate all of the ideas that you had for what people could do. She said, I just have one question. I said, what's that? She said, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? And see, what my mom was doing at that moment, right, is what I would encourage everybody in the audience to be doing right now, which is not to give away your power. There's so many people out there that want to take your power. There's so many threats that we have to our power. But there's a way in which we can take our power away from ourselves. We can take power away from ourselves, right? When we look at a problem and we immediately go to, as I did as a high schooler, what other people could and should do to respond to it. So I've really, ever since then, I've tried to live my life with that thought in mind of never voluntarily relinquishing my power to make change, to fight for change. So, all right, that's a way maybe into the conversation, but then let's go a little bit deeper and think about, in particular, returning citizens. What can we do? And I guess I want to start by saying, I think we're going to cover a lot of different ideas. We're going to cover a lot of different ground. But the most important thing for anybody to ask themselves is, what is my domain of control? What is my sphere of influence? Where are the places that I can make a difference, right? In terms of my church, my synagogue, my temple, my mosque, my neighborhood, my school, my community, my workplace, my university. I teach at a university. So let me give you an example of what I mean about somebody thinking about their domain of control. A number of years ago, there was a presentation that the Ford Foundation was doing in a New York State prison. And the Ford Foundation was presenting the work that it does around the world to fight racism in our justice system and to challenge mass incarceration. And there was a group of incarcerated men there that was listening to it. And at the end of the presentation, one of the men raised his hand and he said, thank you for this presentation. Thank you for this inspiring work. He said, I just have one question. I said, what's that? If I got out, when I get out of this prison, he said, could I be hired by the Ford Foundation? And there was silence in the room. Right? And there was silence in the room because they didn't know the answer. And I bet they suspected the answer was no. But here's where we have to give credit to the Ford Foundation. They went back, they scrubbed their HR policies from top to bottom. And they found that yes, there were a whole bunch of exclusions, including exclusions would have kept this person from ever being hired. But they didn't stop there. They got rid of the exclusions. And then they went further than that. And they set up an internship program to try to hire people, including people who have criminal records and who are coming back from incarceration. And they advertised that program among people in the prison community. They became a fair chance employer, right? And there's a national network of fair chance employers. So the point that I want to make is that the Ford Foundation could have stopped by describing the work that they were doing around the world, but they didn't do that. They were willing to look inside themselves at their own organization, at their own hiring policies. And most people that are part of this webinar are part of an organization that has hiring policies. And so one challenge that I would give to everybody is to push your employer to become a fair chance employer. I have, and you all may be sharing this later as well, but I have some resources on my website, jamesforemanjr.com, which is a guide to how you would become a fair chance employer. So because other people have thought about this, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. There's a process there. So let me just give you one more example of taking this charge, right, of not giving away your power. Let me give you one more example of how I've incorporated this in my own life. So this past year, we just started this fall. I started a program called Access to Law School. And what that program is we recruit 20 fellows from the New Haven area, all of whom want to become lawyers. And my students and I at Yale teach a year-long series of classes on introduction to the legal system, navigating the financial aid process, navigating the admissions process, mastering the LSAT so you can get the good score that you need to get into law school. Now, when I first conceived of this program and we put out the applications, in the first round, we didn't get applications from many people who were formerly incarcerated, even though I had put on the website specifically, we invite applications from that group. Because as I was telling Heather, I teach in prison and I know the talent that exists in our prisons today. But we weren't getting the applications. Now, one reaction, people say, well, all right, I did my best, right? I advertised, I let it known that people could apply. I didn't get any applications. I'm going to move forward with what I have. But I don't think that's enough in this space, because the group of people we're talking about, right? People who have been incarcerated or people who have criminal convictions, even if they haven't been incarcerated, have been so ostracized and stigmatized that a lot of times they're not going to believe it if you just put up on the website that they're invited to apply. They think it's good, you're making it up. So I had to dig deeper and go further and do a whole nother round of outreach to all of the organizations and friends that I know that work with folks that are coming back from prison, that work on reentry, and say, listen, we're serious. We want folks, including folks who have been convicted, have been incarcerated, to apply to be in this program. Well, I'm proud to say that we are having our first gathering of the 20 fellows next weekend, socially at my house, outside, socially distanced, masks, and all that. And of that group of 20, we have 5 who are formerly incarcerated. So that's a small program. That's 5 people. I'm not saying that by itself is going to change the world. It's not. But the point is that each of us can try in our domains of control to do things like that. And if each of us, right, if each of us does a piece, then collectively we will go far towards solving this problem. So that's all I want to say by way of opening comments. And I look forward to a conversation from here on.
Great. Thank you, James. We appreciate those comments and look forward to talking with you. We're going to, in just a moment, move into a conversation. Reverend Lamar has got to make some comments and then engage in discussion with James. But we want to take just a moment and start the process of sharing information about some of these organizations that are out there that are doing work in the area of trying to assist folks both while they're incarcerated and when they're returning. So let's look at some of these just very briefly. You begin to help think your own self about what you might do. One group is Voices for a Second Chance. They're a well-known group in the city. They make contact with folks when they're incarcerated, and then they work with families and they help folks when they are released. They use volunteers in the office, and then they have special things that they do with families around the holidays, and that is a real volunteer opportunity. And you see their information there to learn more about Voices for a Second Chance. The Reentry Task Force is a group of community-based organizations and advocates and concerned residents, and some fair number of returning citizens are engaged, and they assist folks returning to the district in a variety of ways. And you see the co-chairs listed there, Isa Mirza and Louis Sawyer, and you can contact them. Next group is the National Association for the Advancement of Returning Citizens, which is a primarily returning citizen organization. They use volunteers up until the pandemic. They were having weekly meetings. Now they do it on Zoom. They use volunteers in halfway houses and various ways, and you can contact their chair, Eric Weaver, at that address. I think, again, we're sharing that to you with you in chat, and you can see it there, and you'll get a copy of this sent to you. And then finally for this batch is the National Reentry Network for Returning Citizens, and lots of information on that website. They're connected not just in the DC area, but in other communities. And they offer a continuum of care and assistance for people seeking to be reentered. So here are 4 examples of really good creative work being done in a variety of ways in DC. Again, for those of you not in Washington, there are organizations like this in almost every community, and most of them are looking for volunteers. All right, we want to continue the conversation now with James, and I want to invite Reverend William Lamar of Metropolitan AME to make some brief comments, and then talk with James about whatever he would like relating to this topic. Reverend Lamar.
Thank you, Theo, and I want to thank my friends at New York Avenue Presbyterian, Pastor Heather. It's a joy to be with you all. And it is a great honor to talk with James as well. James, his talk really resonated with me, especially around encouraging us to do what we can in our own spheres of influence. The prison industrial complex in America is large and wieldy, with large tentacles that are well-funded and politically powerful, and often trying to put our heads around its hugeness can inhibit our ability to take the next faithful steps. And so I really want to celebrate James's depth of scholarship, but his encouragement of us to do what we have to do in our own spheres of influence. The way that some of my friends put it is, we must discern, all of us gathered here and those whom we influence, what are the next most faithful steps that we can take so we ourselves are not paralyzed by how huge this issue is. And also so that we never forget that ultimately those affected are human beings. those in the systems and the families and the people that they love, the ability of them to thrive and to use their gifts, all of that is truncated in this very difficult and, in my language, death-dealing system. And so if we all do what is necessary to take the next faithful steps, new things can emerge. James, thank you for the opportunity to dialogue with you. Please call me Bill. I'll feel more comfortable. And my first question for you is, you didn't arise out of a vacuum. You were nurtured by James and Constantia. And I want to ask you just to say a little bit more about what it meant to grow up in their home and under their influence, and how that shaped you.
Thank you, Bill. I appreciate that. And I appreciate all the work that you do in the city on behalf of these issues that we're talking about today, and a broader array of social justice issues as well.
Thank you.
We need more voices like yours. To answer your question, it's true in a way. Sometimes I feel like, well, people will compliment you or say, oh, you do this work, and that's wonderful, or you should be proud of it. And there's sometimes in which I feel like, well, it's like if you go into the family business, you shouldn't get, you certainly at least don't get credit for breaking new ground. So I guess in a way, I feel like by virtue of the fact that my parents raised us, as to be, freedom fighters, right, is the way language they use, right? We were talking about the 60s and 70s here. And so I guess I feel like, yeah, I imbibe that tradition. I mean, the people who are in history books are people that, my parents spent time with. And so there was just this constant, just ever-present sense of the collective obligation that we all had to make this world a more just place. And there was also a constant reminder of the traditions of struggle out of which we came. So it wasn't ever presented as it was not like a sacrifice. It was that this was glorious. Like you had, as a Black person, my dad is Black, my mom is white. We were raised as Black children. And this idea that you come out of these generations of struggle, so it's a lineage that you can tap into and be proud of and carry forward, it's just, it was the day to day in our household. It was the books we read, it was the conversations that we had. And I also got to see, over the course of my lifetime, the last thing I'll say on this is that I also got to see some of the changes and transformation that helped to lead to mass incarceration. When I was a child in Atlanta, we lived a couple blocks away from two enormous institutions. We had the General Motors plant was 2 blocks in one direction, and the Atlanta Federal Penitentiary was 2 blocks in another direction. And that's when I was a kid, young. And then when I was finishing law school, by the time I finished law school, came back home, one of those buildings had shut down, right? Doors locked, padlocked, job shipped overseas. And the other building had built an addition. It had built an extra wing, right? And this was happening through my childhood. So and my parents would comment on it. I wasn't the first person to notice the juxtaposition of the GM plant closing and the penitentiary expanding. So I feel like by being raised in that kind of environment, I almost couldn't help but see some of both the challenges that we face today, as well as a path towards trying to meet those challenges.
I'll come back to that. But another question that's intriguing to me, what have you unearthed in your scholarship that has left you the most despondent?
I talked about a little bit about this in a conversation last week, and I'll just kind of touch on it again. I think the thing that I have found Yeah, the most despondent has been looking at the generations of Black citizens, Black activists, and Black leaders in many cases who had this kind of all of the above approach to trying to fight crime and violence and make communities safer. They said, we want more money for police and prosecutors and law enforcement, but we also want more money for jobs and schools and mental health counseling and drug treatment. And they said, we want all of this. And time and time and time again, what came back to Black communities from Congress and from state houses wasn't all of the above, right? It wasn't the Marshall Plan for urban America. It was one of the above. It was money for law enforcement. It was money for police and prisons. And then people turn around and say, well, you asked for it, right? Which is true, right? It is true. In many instances, people were asking for it. But what makes me so despondent is the fact that so consistently for so long, that's the only thing the Black community ever got. That's the only public investment, if we can even call it that, right? And I don't think of it as that. But the line of government funding that was going into the Black community was the law enforcement line, and only that line.
So conversely, this is predictable. I don't like to be predictable, but what has left you the most hopeful and encouraged your perseverance in your work as you have done your studies?
I guess I'm extraordinarily hopeful about the current generation of activists and advocates who are out there, whether it's protesting on the streets or whether it's going down to city halls and city councils and mayor's offices and saying, your previous generation had this limited imagination for how you could respond to crime and violence, but we're breaking through. We're breaking the imagination wide open, right? And we have a whole different vision of how we can create relationships within community, how we can create models of restorative justice and transformative justice, how we can provide communities phone numbers and resources that they can access when they need mental health support for that family member, when they need addiction support. In my generation, right, in our generation, the only way to get that was to call 911. And so people did, because they were desperate. They needed something. And they were told, you got to call 911. And this new generation is saying, we got to break free of that model. We have to create a new set of institutions that will be responsive to community needs, but that don't come with a gun and don't come with handcuffs, right? And don't come with prison and jail being the only place they can take you for treatment where there is none. And so that aspect of it, I find, the very fact that they look at me, they read some of this history and they say to me, like, I can't believe people believed the things that they, I can't believe that somebody would call the police because there was somebody who was strung out in the alley behind their home. We have to have a new way of dealing with that. That inspires me.
So you mentioned something that was near and dear to my heart, and that is, there is no magic wand. We have to engage in politics and organize to change this. Tell me about how you foresee the politics of changing the carceral state in the United States. There are some stories about cooperation across ideological and party lines. Sometimes I think that's overblown, but tell me what you see as far as the politics are concerned.
I mean, I think it's hard to know, right? Because the forces of opposition are real and they are strong. And I think that they have maybe are kind of like had taken a step back in this moment, and they're kind of hoping that things will blow over and the conversation will shift and they'll be able to go back to kind of the status quo. and that people will move on, and these activists that I described will get tired, they'll give up, they'll get burnt out, they'll find a new issue, right? So I don't want to underestimate the scale and the size or the strength or the guile of the opposition, right? Having said that, you know, I am fundamentally optimistic because we are in the midst of the largest protest movement in my lifetime, and you know, depending on how you measure it, some people argue, you know, in American history. My son is 11 years old, and about 10 days after George Floyd was killed, he said to me, Dad, how come we haven't gone to a protest? Now, mind you, right, like here I am thinking of myself as educating him, right, raising him up, and he's kind of embarrassing me about the fact that, you know, and I'm like, you know, in my mind, I'm like, oh, busy and COVID and da 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 da, but he just wasn't having it. He was like, we got it, and so we went to downtown New Haven. There were 5,000 people on the green, and New Haven's small, man. New Haven's only got 100,000 people, so 5,000 people are, you know, serious numbers in my town. And it was, you know, all the things we've seen nationally. It was diverse, it was young, it was multi-generational, but led by young people. It was peaceful, it was inspired, it was strategic. People were giving out the numbers of the aldermen and of the mayor and encouraging people to make demands. So I guess I feel like, you know, that if we do stay in community and stay united, and stay thoughtful and stay passionate and keep our eyes on the prize, I do think that it could be the case that we would look back at right now the way we all look back at, you know, Selma and Birmingham and Montgomery and the March on Washington, and as these moments that forever changed American history. But as we talked about last week, the people in those moments, they didn't know, right? The opposition was strong then too. They didn't know that it would be forever remembered the way that it is now. So I am hopeful that 40 or 50 years from now, people will look back at right now in that same kind of transformational, revolutionary, change-oriented way.
So you have communicated with people who organize around the issue, read about it. What kinds of organizing have been most effective? What organizing strategies do you think have built the most power to chip away at this system?
You know, that's a tough question because the strategies have varied so much from community to community. But I guess a few themes that I see cutting across have been that the most effective organizations have been those that have been led by young people. You know, I mentioned this before, but I do think that people of previous generations, you know, our main responsibility right now is to listen. And that doesn't mean you don't input and you don't give advice. Of course, you have to, because that's what it means to be part of a group, a part of a community, as you express yourself. But I think there has to be a certain humility attached to that. And that is to say, a humility that if you're in your 40s or if you're in your 50s or if you're older than that, your generation produced mass incarceration, right? And so, you know, you have to be humble as you enter into a dialogue about what to do in response. So they have been led by youth, and they have in many ways been very decentralized, right? And that's a strength and a weakness. I don't want to pass over the weakness part of it. There are weaknesses associated with that, but there also is a strength in that it allows a kind of organic mobilization. And it allows people to find their voice in leadership. You know, if we look back to the 1960s, right, a lot of these shots, you've got the same set of images of leaders, you know, time and time and time again. And this generation right now is saying, you know, we can't make that mistake, because if those leaders get co-opted, or God forbid any harm should come to them, and we know there's a history of that, then, you know, we'll be left leaderless. So those, I guess, are, and I guess the last thing that I'll say is they have been forceful, and I don't mean forceful in by way of tactics. That's actually, but I mean in terms of their set of demands. I think they've changed the conversation about what we could imagine as being possible. We weren't talking about reallocating money away from police departments to other branches of government and to community-based organizations 2 years ago. We just weren't. You know, there was task force and commission and commission, and that was not on the table. So this generation has put that on the table. And I don't think it's going to be easy to take it off.
You mentioned that growing up in your home, you really were fed, if I might say metaphorically, in your bottle, you know, the formula of raising a freedom fighter. So you're doing that work of freedom fighting, and those who have joined us are doing that work, are growing into the work. And as I stated earlier, it's a very complex system, and often we can feel overwhelmed. And I would imagine that as a human being, you could feel that as well. How do you nourish yourself in this kind of freedom fighting? How do you nourish James Foreman, and what would you recommend for us in nourishing ourselves and facing such a formidable challenge?
Yeah, you know, it's such an important question, and I guess I think about it maybe in a couple of different ways. I mean, first, there's just like the basic fact of emotional and physical and health wellness, right? There's getting enough sleep. There's finding a chance to exercise. There's not losing track of your friends and your family, right? There's making the time to call, you know, the buddy from college, or, you know, the old friend that you haven't spoken to in a while, like keeping those connections, right? Even when you're busy and feeling overwhelmed. I mean, even if it's just when you're driving home or drive from meeting to meeting. For me, a lot of it is my son. He's 11, so it's going to his baseball games. You know, I'll have a day where I'll look at my calendar, and from minute to minute to minute, I just feel like there's one obligation after another, and they're all going to exhaust me. And then I'll look and I'll see, oh, he's got a little league baseball game at 6 o'clock. And I'm like, all right, all I have to do is make it to the baseball game, and I'm going to be good. So there's those things, right, that we all need to do for ourselves and find out what they are. For me, it's, you know, going to the gym a couple times a week, those kind of things. And then there's, I guess, also thinking about how we do our work, right? And because I think there are ways of doing work that can be more and less sustaining. For me, you know, Brian Stevenson, who I know has given this talk in the past, and, you know, obviously one of the great heroes of America, of the world. There's no prize that they give out right now that, in my mind, he shouldn't be getting. He, you know, talks about, right, this idea of proximity, and there are different ways to go with that. But for me, right, the reason why being close to both other people, colleagues in the work, and also people on whose behalf I'm working, being close, being proximate to me is very sustaining. Because so often, I mean, you probably get this question every week, every day probably. I know I get it all the time, which is, you know, how do you keep going? There's so many obstacles. There's the opposition is so strong, and you're working against this massive system that seems so entrenched. And for me, what keeps me going is the relationships with individual people who I can see doing things that were not possible in their lives a month ago, 6 months ago. I led off by talking about this access to law school program, right, that I've just started. But for me, sitting down, or even virtually for the time being, sitting next to somebody, talking to them about their obstacles that they have faced in their life and the dreams that they still have for themselves and their family, and then helping them chart a pathway for how they can achieve that and how they can thrive, and them seeing them do it. That for me carries me through. That makes me want to go. And so I always tell people, if you're feeling demoralized, the most important thing you can do today is to start doing something. Because the act of doing something, it doesn't matter. People say, what's the most powerful? What's the most impactful? I'm like, I'm not even gonna answer that question for you. You do something, you pick something and do it today. And I guarantee you that tomorrow when you get up, you're gonna want to do more. That's how I think about it.
James, thank you for fighting with us and for us. Thank you so much. Theo?
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, James and Reverend Lamar. It was a great conversation. Wish we could go on and on. In the time we have left, we do want to keep the conversation going. A number of questions have come in. Feel free to add others if you have them. And I'll just pick some of the ones here that people seem to like, and others that seem particularly appropriate. James, one person picked up on the comments you made about education in prison.
Yes.
And they ask in particular, are you familiar with Alternatives to Violence Project, and what you think about that effort, and just other comments you'd make about how we can support education in prisons?
Absolutely. So I don't know that exact program, Alternatives to Violence, but I certainly like the title, and it sounds like that they're doing important work in terms of furthering that work. So the program that I'm involved in is a national program, and it's called Inside Out. And what it does is it trains teachers and professors to teach their classes that they would normally teach at their home institution or home university, but to teach them inside a prison. And there's a very, very if you're in the DC area, there's a very, very powerful program out of Georgetown University that does a lot of work in the DC jail. Mark Howard is, if you Google Georgetown University, Mark Howard Prison, it'll come right up. Maybe we could even find it while we're on this call and put it in the chat. But they do very, very important education work inside prison. I've participated in some of their programming, and I can tell you it's the real deal. I know, Theo, you're also going to be sharing this with people in a little bit, but the Free Minds Book Club is a DC-based organization that does really transformative and powerful work, putting people in book club relationships with folks who are incarcerated. Because I get asked this question so often, I put on my website a link towards volunteering in prison. And that's a bunch of national organizations that you will find there. So if you're not in the DC area, you can go on jamesformanjr.com, click get involved. And again, it's not to benefit me. I'm just connecting you to other organizations that are out there that are doing this work, so you can find resources there. So what I would say, and this goes to my conversation with Reverend Lamar, which is that if you do get involved in one of these programs and you find yourself doing tutoring or doing mentoring or doing an education, doing a letter writing program, I think that one of the things you will come away with is the tremendous power and potential, right? The brilliance in many ways that exists right now, locked up in many of our prisons. And I think that you will find those personal connections very affirming and very rewarding, and it will help you stay in the struggle in the way that Reverend Lamar and I were just talking about. I just call him Bill because that's easier, that Bill and I were just talking about.
Great, thanks. We're going to be sharing some resources about free minds and some others.
Good.
Also, I just want to note that on the chat, Stephanie Coffey from Alfred Street Baptist Church in Alexandria has a post there that some people may want to look at. They've compiled a lot of resources and opportunities. Of course, Alfred Street is one of the great churches of the DC area. So that I just point that out. Maybe we'll pick those up and add those to the ones we send out, but really appreciate her posting that. James has a question. Several people liked Jana Kirkman and others liked it. It's about cash bail.
Yeah.
And there's an effort to end cash bail. Is that a valuable use of organizing resources, or is it not? Is it a dead end because it creates other problems? What's your thought about that as an issue to focus on?
I think it's a very valuable use of resources. There was an op-ed in the New York Times. Again, maybe somebody will find it and share it on chat. It was called, I think, The Power of Community Bail Funds, and it came out within the past week. And it makes the case very, very, I think, correctly for the impact that these community bail funds can have. Now, DC itself has many, many problems, but DC, one good thing about the DC system is that DC doesn't have the cash bail system that most of the country has. And so I, as a practitioner, that actually wasn't something that I came up against, but I've since learned about it and I've since researched it. And what people should know basically is this, right? We have, on any given night in America, we have about 700,000 people that are behind bars. They're not in prison, they're in jails. And most of those people that are in jails are people that are awaiting trial. They have not been convicted, which means that they are legally innocent in our system, right? They are legally innocent, yet they are locked up. Why are they locked up when they're legally innocent? They're locked up for the simple fact that they cannot afford to make bail. So we have a system in our country right now where if you are wealthy, it doesn't matter what you've been charged with, right? You can post bail and you can get out. But if you're poor, you can have the most trivial charge against you, the most minor charge against you, and you can have what the system even considers a relatively low bail. But you know, if you're poor and you don't have $500, $500 might as well be $1 million. You don't have it. Right? And so you're going to be locked up, which puts an incredible pressure on people to plead guilty, because people plead guilty just so that they can get out. So I think that cash bail funds are absolutely a crucial thing that is happening right now. And what I like about them in some jurisdictions is that not only are they raising money from people to help post bail, but they are simultaneously lobbying to change the bail laws of those jurisdictions. So it's like at the same time, it's harm reduction because you're getting people out, but you're also trying to create systemic reform at the same time. So no, that would be at the very top of my list of things that people on this call should consider signing up to do.
Good, thank you. Yeah, last week we mentioned a group called Equal Justice Under Law. And this is one of the main things they work on. People want to know more about that. Actually, a member of our church is one of the founders of that. But good to hear your comments on that. Someone else asked, Cheryl Gravy, and then several other people ask about the concept of restorative justice. We hear about that. Is that an approach that might be unifying? Could it be resonate across political differences? What are your thoughts about that movement and how it might play a role in all of this?
Absolutely, it's very powerful. I just want to mention for the DC folks, there's a terrific advocate named Seema Gajwani. She is a lawyer that's in Attorney General Carl Racine's office, and they are been pioneering restorative justice programs for juvenile court in Washington, DC, run out of the Attorney General's office. As your DC folks may know, the Attorney General in DC is responsible for juvenile court prosecutions in the city. Adult prosecutions are from the US Attorney's Office, right? And there's a lot of us that believe that there should be local control of that office as well. But right now, that office answers to the president, but the Attorney General is an elected official in DC. Carl Racine is a visionary, reform-oriented leader, and he and Seema Gajwani have set up a very model, really, restorative justice program. So you happen to be in a city that's really at the cutting edge of some of this. Now, if you want to expand out nationally, well, what is restorative justice? So I think the simplest way of thinking about it is, let's compare the criminal justice questions to the restorative justice questions. So our criminal system asks the following questions. It says, who broke the law and how should they be punished? Restorative justice asks a different set of questions. It says, who was harmed? What was the harm? And what can the community, including the person that contributed to causing the harm, do to address that harm? And if you think about it, right, most people that have been harmed, that's actually what they want. They want the harm that they suffered to be acknowledged and to be addressed and to be remedied. They want the chance to heal. What our criminal system has said for 50 years, really for 100 years or longer, but it said to people, well, here's how we're going to address your harm. We're going to lock up the person who did it. Well, if you ask somebody who's been a victim of crime, who's been harmed, if you say, well, you know, as between locking somebody up and doing nothing, what do you want? They're going to say, okay, we'll lock them up. I don't want you to do nothing. But there are a lot of people who, when given this other opportunity, right, when given the opportunity to have the harm acknowledged and have the person and the broader community come together to creatively think about, what can we do to restore you? What can we do to help you rebuild? What can we do to say we're sorry? Those kinds of questions are actually the ones that people want to have asked of them, and they want to have the opportunity to answer. So what I would say about restorative justice is not going to completely replace the system that we have now, but it can replace a lot of it. It can replace a lot of what we are doing right now. But we have to create more programs, and then we have to fund them adequately in a sustained way. I would love it if I could get to a point where, when you were in Judiciary Square in DC, the Hall of Restorative Justice, right, was bigger than the Superior Court. And the Superior Court was off to the side trying to struggle for funding every year to see if it could get its budget renewed, and being asked a whole series of questions about, well, have you proved your efficacy? Have you proved your sustainability? Have you proved that you can scale up? That's the world that I want to live in.
Great, great. Time for one sort of final question, then we'll go to, want to hear some comments. We'll share some more information about groups and go to closing comments. But someone asked, Wanda asks, just what specific things can churches or other congregations do to help incarcerated people reintegrate into society? What are some of the types of help folks might need, or assistance, or things that churches particularly might be well equipped to do?
Well, honestly, Theo, I can't really imagine anybody better than you to answer that question, given the work that you have done. So, and I know you're going to be offering, in fact, I know you're going to be offering your program, the program that you're involved with, and some other programs as a concrete answer to this. But so let me answer it in a more maybe kind of overarching way. Right, we're talking right today about returning citizens, right, and helping them thrive upon their return to our communities. Well, again, this goes to the conversation that Bill and I were having about the scale and the scope of the problem and how it can seem so overwhelming to people. So every year across the country, we have about 1 million people who come back into our community from prison or jail. Mostly it's from jail, and it's because of the cycling. You know, you might be in jail for 3 days, 4 days, a couple of weeks. So there's a lot of people coming back. So it's about 1 million people if you add them all up. All right, now if I tell you, well, we're gonna do something, we've got to do something for 1 million people. you might say, oh man, you know, I don't know what I can do about 1 million. Okay, but now what if I tell you that in this country, we have 300,000 churches, synagogues, mosques, temples, right? Religious houses of worship. All right, so now I come to you and I say, all right, I want your house of worship to take 3 people. Start with 3 and say, what we are going to do is we're going to be your home. We're going to be we may become your spiritual home, but that's not even where we're starting. What we're starting is we're going to be a set of resources for you. We are going to be the people that commit to help you get housing, to help you get a job. We're going to be the community of people that's going to commit to help you figure out how you can get back on the internet, help you learn the internet if you've been locked up for so long that you don't even know it. We're going to help you get a license. I mean, these basic things, Theo, and you know this, you know this, but if you don't have a license, right, or a non-driver's ID, you can't go anywhere. Your prison Department of Corrections doesn't help. You need a government issued driver's license. Well, that's going to cost you $30 or $40 or $50. You're going to need a few forms.
Yeah.
If you don't have any money, again, we talked about this before, $50 might as well be $1 million. So it's actually some of the small things like that. Now, if each one of these houses of worship were to take 3, well, now we've got the problem. Now we have everybody, right? We're at 900. A few places would have to take 4 to get us to 1 million. But you get the point, which is that these to me are some of the examples of the things that need to be done. And I think that churches and synagogues and temples and mosques really should be at the cutting edge. And as I said, nobody knows this better than you, Theo, and the work that you have done, which has been so important.
Thank you. That was a great comment, great answer, and a lot of specifics there, you know, to follow up on. We do want to share a little bit more information about some other groups, and then I'm going to call on Reverend Lamar to make some final comments to us. And then we have a sort of thank you to James. We want to offer in some final comments and get a word back from you on some chat. So stay with us. Still want input from you on several things as we draw to a close. But let's look at, again, some information. We're going to email this all to you. But here are a couple of organizations, both actually that James has been involved with. You heard him mention last week as part of his introduction that he helped found the Maya Angelou Public Charter School. And the idea was a school to help youth who had not been successful in other contexts, many who had been incarcerated or were in risk of it. And these schools still operate. And they also operate an academy at the New Beginnings facility, which is for incarcerated youth. And they use volunteers. They in person and online to help in different ways, particularly people who want to be tutors or mentors. And you see Ann Schoolcroft's contact information there. She can give you more information about how to be engaged. Free Minds Book Club, you heard James talk about it. They do really innovative work using the literary arts, creating book clubs, both within facilities where folks are incarcerated and for returning citizens. They do a whole range of things. They use volunteers. They've created some very good ways to use volunteers virtually. So that's another group where you can have really direct impact on individuals who are either currently or formerly incarcerated. Next group then is the Campaign for Fair Sentencing of Youth. We talked about them a little bit last week, and some of their efforts, and then James spoke to it last week about efforts to revise some of these incredibly harsh sentences that were handed out to individuals, and they've been involved in advocacy efforts. They also help people who have youth who've been serving these sentences have been released. And there's more information about their work, both advocacy and other service work. And then the DC Community Mediation Center does a whole range of things with community mediation, but they have a portion where they do a mediation with justice involved individuals and their families, and help them to get ready to reintegrate into society. And if you're interested in mediation, they do a lot of things, and that one project might be of interest to you. And then the final one that I want to mention is a network that James made reference to earlier. It's a network that we at New York Avenue, in cooperation with some folks at Reverend Lamar's church, Metropolitan AME, started about 2 years ago. And what we're doing is trying to get congregations to join this network so that on a regular basis, they get information about clients of Public Defender Service who are returning from incarceration or occasionally still are, who have particular needs. And we share that information with the congregations, and then those congregations who want to respond to that case can. We'd love to have more congregations, churches or other faith congregations to be part of this. No obligation for the number of people you help, but you become part of a network, you learn about individuals, and it's very specific needs, like the kind of things James talked about. Someone needing to get an ID, someone needing to have ways of traveling around the city. Sometimes we raise a small amount of money to help someone keep from losing their home. A number of things. And if you're interested in this, I'm actually the contact for that. You see my email there. I want to mention just one more thing. There's an effort in the district now, it's been going on for some time, to try to make it easier to seal criminal records. And there's some legislation in front of the DC Council about this. We're hoping there'll be some action this fall. And we at Arcan are also kind of identifying people who want to help do that. And it's sort of an advocacy opportunity that we're interested in. So if you're interested in that issue too, you should contact me, and we'll be gathering names and let you know how you can be involved. Again, we'll send this information out to everybody, in the next day or two. But these are some examples, and there are other groups. But there's a lot out there, and I think an easy way to get involved is to pick up on one or more of these opportunities in that way. All right, as we move towards closing, I want to invite Bill Lamar to make some final comments, and then we'll come back for some quick closing announcements and to get some feedback from you in chat. Bill?
Thank you, Theo. In closing, I want to remind us that the biblical record is a story punctuated, literally punctuated by unjust imprisonments. Joseph, Samson, Jeremiah, Micaiah, Zedekiah, Daniel, John the Baptist, Peter, James, John, Silas, and Jesus. Jesus was held in captivity, in life, and guarded in death by soldiers afraid that his body would be stolen and his disciples would claim that he had risen, because the empire was frightened, because if the one tool that they occupied and had monopolized, which was death, if there were rumors that death could be overcome, then their power would have been vanquished. Let me make a major theological point that really has come alive to me in preparing for these discussions, and that is that the resurrection of Jesus is a narrative concerning a returning citizen. That the resurrection is a narrative concerning a returning citizen. Let's also be reminded that prison, by and large, is for the powerless and not the powerful. To be in prison does not necessarily mean criminality. What it more than likely means is that you belong to a group of people considered undesirable by the political and economic powers. Often it is more about your undesirability than it is about criminality, more about poverty than it is about criminality. Just a few more thoughts. Dr. Christopher Marshall wrote an elegant paper entitled Prison, Prisoners, and the Bible. And he lands on these points that I hope will encourage us to get involved. First of all, imprisonment in all of its many incarnations causes suffering, intergenerational, multi-generational suffering. that imprisonment in biblical times and in our own times was an instrument of oppression more than an instrument of justice. That imprisonment is identified in Scripture with the spirit and the power of death. Jesus says that he came to set the captives free, and that was not a spiritualization, but it was literally a call to set free those whose bodies had been bound and who had been locked out of the opportunities necessary for their thriving. And finally, God is in the business of setting prisoners free. There is not one place in Scripture, one place in our tradition where prisons are divinely endorsed. Let me end with a passage of Scripture that I hope will encourage us to go forward. Acts chapter 16, verse 26. Suddenly there was an earthquake so violent that the foundations of the prison were shaken, and immediately all the doors were opened and everyone's chains were unfastened. We are called to be that earthquake that will shake prison walls and doors open. Let us go and be earthquakes in the communities we've been called to serve. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Wonderful words to hold with us. So as we draw to a close, I want to open the chat again, pose 2 questions, and then we have a couple of things we want to do I think you'll find of interest. So the chat is open. We want to ask you to comment on either of these 2 questions. And again, we're going to gather these, look at them, and draw some sense from them about what future work and programs we ought to do. So 2 questions. What was particularly helpful to you in this program? It could be anything, something you learned, something you were inspired by, one particular thought. Secondly, what ideas do you have about how you can help? You've been sitting there maybe thinking about something you might do, a group you might want to contact, or way you could help. So make any comments you want on chat as we open it, and it will be 3 or 4 minutes here as we close. And again, I have a couple of announcements while you are entering your comments. But before I do, I want to introduce Avis Buchanan, who's with us, who is the director of the Public Defender Service in Washington, D.C., to make her own announcement.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you very much, Theo. James has been the primary focus of this evening's program, and he is certainly deserving of the award that is about to be presented. But we think someone else is deserving too. So we'd like to turn the spotlight on you, Theo Brown, and recognize you for all that you've done for the Public Defender Service's clients over the last 5 years. So tonight, the PDS Champion of Liberty Award goes not to James, as you've been led to believe, but to you. At a time of major social upheaval and intense interest in criminal justice reform, it is fitting that we honor someone like you, whose commitment to people dealing with their involvement in the difficulties of being involved in the criminal legal system, you embody that. And the very first PDS client you ever helped was someone back in 2015 who needed access to his funds, personal funds he had. And because of your work, he was able to get that through the assistance of a volunteer because he didn't have any family to help him out in the community when he was in prison. And so you made a positive difference in his life. And one thing you don't do at PDS is let people know how useful you are, because we just keep coming back. And that's what we did with you. And year after year, client after client, you stepped in, whether it was financial resources or non-financial resources, whether it was help paying a bill, help with a phone bill, utility bills, getting a car out of storage, rent. It didn't matter. You didn't say no, you stepped up. And afterwards, you expanded your efforts and you incorporated other organizations. And eventually, as you have told us, although you downplayed your role in this, you started ARCAN along with the New York Avenue Presbyterian Church and Metropolitan AME Church, and expanding those efforts to focus on people who are coming out of prison. And the ARCAN organization eventually expanded to include other churches, and may, as a result of your push today, be even bigger when the churches see how effective you have been. and their members will want to join in the efforts that you are making and have done so successfully. And since then, whether it's clothing, gift cards, mentors, you continue to make a difference. And all these forms of assistance have helped our clients succeed. And they've been particularly helpful during the pandemic as PDS has obtained release for clients under the district's Incarceration Reduction Amendment Act and the district's new compassionate release law. When PDS calls, Theo Brown answers, RCAN gets to work, and clients see results. And for all that, PDS makes you an honorary champion of liberty. And so we present you with this award that you will ultimately get, in person. It says, recognizing Theo Brown as champion of liberty for his contributions to the well-being and success of PDS clients, September 3rd, 2020. And so now, thank you on behalf of PDS and on behalf of PDS clients. And I'll turn the program back over to you so you can proceed as you had originally planned.
Thank you so much, Avis. I appreciate that. And on behalf of everybody with the churches and the RCAN network and all, we really appreciate that very much. You did not make the announcement I was told you were going to make, but it's appreciated. And I appreciate it also as just sort of underscoring some of the work we do. And we'd love to have other congregations join us. So do reach out to me or to Don Craig at Metropolitan AME. Those of you who know him, if you want to be part of this and learn more. So thank you so much, Avis. And again, we do thank you, James, for your help and your involvement. I'm happy to announce, I want to mention a couple of other final programs here as we close. We have a couple of other things coming up. We do, in fact, have another program with James Foreman, Jr. We don't have the date. It will be this fall, and it's intended as a follow-up conversation. So we can think about this, look at our own efforts to be involved, and have a conversation with James. It'll just be an hour-long time period where we just can talk with him, and after we've had a few weeks to reflect on this and the work we're doing, and we'll get back to you soon about that. And then I want you to know, and we'll send emails to people on our list about another program on another subject. We have Karina Gore from Union Theological Seminary, the Center for Earth Ethics in New York City, coming, I wish she was coming, but through a webinar, she will come to us on September 19th, and we'll send some information about that also. So just be aware of that. Again, thank you so much for your participation tonight. I want to remind you about James's book. I think the link was sent earlier, and we will send it out again. I really recommend, if you've not read it, to get a copy of it and read it. And we will be sending follow-up information to all of you. Thank you so much for your participation. And as we close, I want to say thanks again to everybody who helped, our technical team and the panelists, and invite Heather Shortledge to close with a final word.
Thank you, Theo. We heard from Bill Lamar that we are supposed to go and be earthquakes in our community. And we heard that great story from James Foreman Jr.'s mom about not what are other people going to do or what should other people do, but what are you going to do? I hope that you will take those charges with you tonight, and may God be with you. May God be with all of those who are incarcerated and with all of these fine folks who are working alongside them. Amen and amen. Good night.